Okay, so good afternoon. We will call this special meeting of the Grapevine Caldwell Board of Trustees to order on January 16th, 2024 at 5 p.m. We are missing AJ Pontillo and Diana Sager. Trustee Bradley, do we have any public comments? Okay, we don't have any public comments, so we're moving to the reports of the superintendent. Item A is to appoint a director to serve on the Tax Increment Financing District Reinvestment Zone Number 2, City of Grapevine Board of Directors for a 2-year term. Dr. Schnell.
Yeah, so this item involves the TERS 2, or the Gaylord TIF, and the Board of Trustees of the GCISD must formally appoint a director to serve on this TIF District Reinvestment Zone, TERS number 2, Board of Directors. As I mentioned, the Gaylord TERS. For City of Grapevine, Ordinance 98-140, directors shall be appointed by the respective governing bodies and shall serve for 2-year terms or until their successors are appointed. Terms run from January 1 through December 31. The GCISD Board of Trustees shall appoint a person to serve on the TERS Board of Directors for a term beginning in January 24 and continuing until December 26. And the reason for this is because we were approached by the City of Grapevine about the possibility of using these TIF Gaylord funds for funding our SROs in our Grapevine schools. And so they are having to go through a process to revise a language in the initial, that TIF 2 language. And so going through a process to do that, which involves a board of directors. And as we've done in the past, having a board, a GCISD representative serving on that board of directors, they are asking us to do that at this time. They're also recommending that it be a trustee, a GCISD trustee, because the other members on the board are current city council members for City of Grapevine. And so because it involves GCISD monies, they would, again, recommending that it be a trustee from a board. And so because this is a board-appointed director, I'd like to turn it over to Board President Shannon Braun to walk you through the recommendation.
So the recommendation is for the Board of Trustees to appoint Mary Humphrey to serve as the district's director on the Grapevine Tax Increment Financing District Reinvestment Zone Number 2 Board of Directors for a term beginning January 2024 and continuing through December 2026. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Trustee Bradley makes the motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
You second? Okay, so Trustee St. John seconds. Do we have any discussion? Okay. So all in favor by a show of hands, raise your hand. Motion passes 6-0. The next item is to approve the updated School Health Advisory Council membership for 2023-2024.
Yes, so we have an updated roster. You can see in your packet an attachment the asterisks, or we'll call it easier to say stars. The names that are listed with the star by them, those are the new recommendations for this roster. The reason why we're bringing it right now and instead of next Monday is because their next meeting is this Friday. And we were trying to get these names hopefully approved so they could vote at the next meeting on Friday. And so you have that attached roster. Like I said, that revised roster is the recommendations for the Board of Trustees to approve the updated membership as presented.
So do I have a motion for the, Mary has the motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the updated roster as presented.
Do I have a second? Tammy seconds. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, by a show of hands. Motion passes 7-0. We will now move to the workshop portion of our meeting. We're going to work on our balanced scorecard. Greg Gibson is going to lead us in that from Moat Casey. The first thing that we're going to do, and this is for the trustees, we're going to actually retake those 2 surveys or those 2 tests that we did 6 months ago and then we'll get the result of those at the end.
Thank you. Thank you all for giving me a warm place to be tonight. It's been an interesting few days in North Texas. It always sounds fun to have 30 cows and 5 horses until the polar vortex hits, and then it gets interesting. When I made out my notes a couple of weeks ago, I was the note that I made to kick this off as an icebreaker, was how about them Cowboys? That, I guess I'm not refraining from that. Yeah.
That still works.
Yeah.
Next year.
Yeah. Next year. Always next year. Before we look at or thank you for kicking off that we're going to take the inventories again, so I'll just immediately pass out the inventory. I'll do that in just a second. Just in way of introduction, when I was here one time before and we were just getting started, we were talking about the fact that most organizations, either Harvard Business School and Columbia Business School, every year do studies on just strategic planning. Most organizations, by both of their studies annually, either have too much strategy or not enough strategy. Like when they survey like 10,000 organizations, it's just it's always fascinating to me, like too much. I think about too much, and I kind of struggle with this concept of could you really have too much? And then I went to work for a couple of districts in the Valley, Rio Grande Valley, since I was last here. And, the superintendent's saying I'm coming in and, everybody's coming like this, y'all remember that, and the initial meeting. So they start showing, look on the website. And so they submitted a grant for something and they had to demonstrate a strategic plan for the hat. And then they had another grant, completely unrelated, and they had to have a strategic plan, and then they had another grant. And then the board had goals, and then the superintendent had goals, and then someone did a workshop at Region 1, said you should develop some goals, and we got those goals. That's the too much, right? Like we're on their website, and we're looking what could be argued as 6 strategic plans. And, of course, my question is, which one are y'all following? And everybody's head kind of goes down, and, like, it just depends on who we're talking to at that moment. So then on the flip side of that, you walk in sometimes and someone says, what's strategery? Like what does that even mean? And so we have nothing other than maybe a district improvement plan that's required, by law. And so my observation is that when these start getting to this point, and we start getting really clear about gap analysis, I'm looking at your numbers. So you're saying from this to this, we start perseverating on that gap, and we don't pause to celebrate the fact that we have the gap articulated. Like we just look, we can't stop staring at, oh my gosh, there's so much work to do. But the fact that you have clarity about the work to do is the first thing to celebrate. And I know this team now a little bit better, and like they're getting into this. And every once in a while I have to say stop and celebrate the fact that we know we're going from, our target is from this number to this number. I hope that makes sense. Like we have a tendency to
Celebrate the little wins along the way.
This is a win.
Yeah, this is a win.
Just doing it.
Just having this where someone says, we have a clear strategy management plan. They say that to me, and so I say, put it in my hand. And I get like, wait, well, y'all could literally put it in my hand, right? When you say put it in my hand, it means it lives somewhere. It can be printed, thank you, whoever put it on big paper, thank you very much. But it lives somewhere, and if I ask the question, put it in my hand, it can be in my hand, and that is huge. Just to have the plan is huge. And I want to anchor back to, I said that there were 5 problems we were going to try to solve, and I want to remind you all of those, that we have a tendency to focus on student achievement because that's the mission of Texas Public Schools, and I get it. But then we don't look at staff, we don't look at community, and we don't look at financial. from this same strategic lens. We just kind of do that other stuff. So when you look at this with 4 perspectives, then you kind of address that first concern of, we've got student, staff, community, and finance. Like we've got the big buckets, we've got strategies around all 5 of those, or 4 of those big buckets. And then this second piece that we said we were trying to address was this clarity between a strategic objective, what we are trying to do, and a key strategic action, how we are trying to get at that what. When you look at columns 2 and 3 on the scorecard, you have clarity now, and I mean, there was cognitive dissonance about those 2 things when we started, right? Fair enough? Like what's the objective? What's the big thing we're trying to move? That's column 2. And then how are we going to get there? That's column 3. So that's another big hurdle that strategy execution plans lack generally. The third big hurdle is not organizations not understanding the difference between a leading measure, how we look at direction along the way. Are we aiming towards the target? That's your column 4, lead measures. And then column 5, lagging measures. Like what's the big number we're trying to move at the end of this? I know it's unfair to pick on one of y'all, but like, is that 80% clear between column 4 and column 5, 90%, 95%? Where do y'all, I know it's getting clearer and clearer and clearer.
I would say we're above 90% because the understanding of the progress measures, that's what we are using current along the way to gauge our progress toward that last column, which is the outcome measure. And then the outcome is a measurement that essentially happens once for most of them.
Right.
And then it's a lagging measure. We're always working toward the next one.
This year's beginning of the year glances at last year's end of the year, right? So see, I could have preloaded that question. I didn't. My observation is that I think that they are at 90% plus on clarity between those 2 columns. Now, having said that, in the first year of implementation, it's very common for leading measures to change a little bit. So trustees, y'all need to be ready for a little bit of that wobble, because you start peeling it back and you start saying, wait a minute, there may be a better way to measure that than we thought. In fact, if that's not happening, I don't think you're doing it with fidelity. It should almost naturally happen that some of the things start changing. We start getting clarity about column 4. In the first 12 to 18 months, and I know I said this at the first meeting, some of these targets to the right could wobble a little bit. Now, right now we're at a challenge because we had COVID, and then we had a state testing kind of debacle, and then there's a lawsuit. And so it may be hard to get trend analysis, but I'm assuming with you all feeling 90% plus that y'all talked about all those wobbles and, and like settled on what's a reasonable target. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, within the academic goals. So we have what I would call an addendum to this, which is really kind of what we use within our team to monitor our progress along the way. So we have a very specific goal set. I'll use STAR as an example since we're talking about that for 2024. That is based on our actual student performance last year, that lag measure. So we used actual data, actual students of where we would like to be to make that goal. And then for years beyond that, up to this being a 5-year plan in 2028, we're looking at a percentage of gain after that. So the overall goal may be adjusted, as you mentioned, as we evaluate the actual data of our students each year to make sure that our goals are based on our students. We can only do that for what is our work in progress of our goals. So we have spring goals, while this says 2028. We have a goal of what we're looking for in each STAR and EOC content area for the spring of 2024.
Perfect.
We will measure against that. That's our progress measure toward this 28 goal. And then we have them set in increments on that chart, but they will be revisited with our actual data when we receive 24. So we would then revisit all of those as we work them out.
So thank you. And for trustees, the and the superintendent, I remember clearly, we worked on the scorecard probably for 24 months. And that right-hand column got clearer and clearer as some of that is evaluated. And then it was about year three, there's nothing magical about that, that the board adopted column 5. Does that make sense?
Down the road, down the road.
Down the road,
Yeah.
because we felt comfortable enough that it wasn't every single measure in there, but we pulled out, a set that the board adopted.
And one of the things we want to talk through here in a few moments after the board does this, their first assessment piece. But we want to talk through kind of what Sheila was getting to through each priority and let you guys know what's changed over the last 6-7 months. Because I know you've seen it ebb and flow a little bit, but as Greg is saying, that's going to be normal in this process, but we also want to update you on what we've changed, but also give you a chance to ask some questions too and go, well, I thought this or I expected this, so let's talk through some of that so we can all kind of stay aligned and be aligned, if that makes sense. And so we're going to walk through each priority like that tonight, right? And you guys, yeah, and capture feedback. Certainly, that's what this is. We need your feedback, right? But then two, you've seen recently us, we distributed out those targets especially on the STAR and the OC stuff. There's more to come too on the advanced academics piece, which Dr. Schauber will talk through that as well. But again, I just want you guys to know that kind of what we started talking about on this end a little bit, we're going to get through the 4 priorities like that tonight. So, but I don't want to take up any time because I want you guys to do that assessment piece first, and then we'll get into that meeting.
Yeah, and I apologize for kind of inadvertently getting there. I love scorecards. If we can start those around, like I nerd out on them. And the final thing in way of introduction that organizations don't have is a synchronistic relationship between the strategic team and the tactical team to do the very thing that the superintendent said we were going to do here in a little bit. When the scorecard or the strategic plan comes out in board meetings, unfortunately, all over the state, it's usually because there's about to be a fight. I mean, there's some problem. We're going to use it. We're going to weaponize it, one way or the other. The board's not doing their job. This side says, or the tactical team's not doing it. We're building just a cadence of, not only is there not a problem, this is the way we do business. We talk back and forth between the tactical and the strategic team in a harmonious rhythm to always calibrate. You were elected from the community to represent the community and to kind of keep that community lens, on it. But this is a way to articulate what those targets are, which is exciting to me. And in a narrower sense, tonight, from the board, just me asking you this, as we start taking those self-assessments, I would hope that we would finish with, are our good governance expectations clear? And are they in writing? And are they transparent? So go get a good governance framework that you can say, they're getting there for sure. And then are you, the strategic team, I know this is very passionate, you modeling continuous improvement. So you're modeling continuous improvement from the board work, just like you want the tactical team to accomplish. And for the board to say, we're not gonna work continuous improvement as a board, but y'all do it when y'all are running the district, to me is disingenuous, right? So to that end, that's why we're gonna take the second assessment of these two, and then by the end of the meeting, I'll be able to compare to where we were, how long ago?
6 months ago, I think.
June or July.
June.
I guess that's right, so 6 or 7 months now of progress. We'll just do a progress check. Those two inventories are self-perception. There's no such thing as a right or a wrong response. Don't put your name on it. If you do want your version back, once we calibrate them, if y'all remember, put some symbol or something on it in the bottom right-hand corner so you can recognize a smiley face or a frowning face or however you feel tonight. Anyway, we'll take a few minutes to take those two assessments. There will be awkward silence.
Are we doing both of these? Is that what we're doing both of?
Yes, ma'am, sorry, I should have said that. Good governance inventory and team trust inventory, both. There's 2 pages to the team trust.
Are you done?
Neutral.
Yeah, I did.
Yes.
All right, staying, we got them collected, we're going to have them audited by Deloitte and Touche while we're finishing the rest, AKA Stephanie. And then we'll, again, as President Ron said, we'll debrief those at the end. So if you all remember, and Brad, this is a preamble to the scorecard, so we're going to jump right into it. But when the first time I was here, there were two models that were laid on the table. And one just showed the strategic role. You all represented good governance, and we kind of believe the strategic role versus the tactical role versus the operational role. So generally speaking, the strategic role is the superintendent and the board, and then the tactical team is led by the people to my left, generally speaking, and then I would argue, you know, the full tactical team goes to the campus level administration, so, you know, and operations, that's the full tactical team. They're on your administrative pay grade, you know, or your pay schedule. And then the operational role is about 90% of our school districts, and that's the front line, you know, where teachers are interacting directly with our customers, parents, and students. And so we, in the interest of time, when we first got started, I didn't really go into this first document. And I'm not going to read to you tonight. This is really stuff for you to think about and take with you as just a next set of information. But when you think about the strategic role, if you look at the one that's titled 3 Essential Roles in an Aligned System, well, column 2 on this, the strategic column, when we looked at that model, you'll notice that primary roles and responsibilities, number 1 on areas of alignment, those are the bullet points that were in that model. So just as a reminder, the strategic role is the big picture, sets targets for overall goals, usually looks at the long term. The tactical team, again, primarily to my left tonight, if the board looks at the big picture, the tactical team, especially this team that attends board meetings, has to both look at that big picture, but then they also have to look at how wide this thing goes. You know, like if we're going to actually get people to implement this, work on these strategic actions, that takes a lot of planning and foresight. So that's column 2, and then the operational role, of course, you know, is at the ground level. They see what's happening day to day. They refine and adjust, and then we would hope that there's structures for the operational role to provide feedback to the tactical role. So we've seen number 1 that's on this document. I want you to look at 2, 3, and 4 real quickly. This is, for lack of a better term, new material. So when you're thinking about the strategic role on your time and energy, from the strategic role, and we started this with action verbs. So your action verbs, the people to my right, are envision, systematic monitoring, ensuring. So you're said plainly, you're not doing the work, you're ensuring that the work is going. That's the role of the strategic team. Look at these bullets. You monitor progress of the strategic objectives, and you collaborate with the tactical team. Now said that's what we're about to do here in a little bit. We're actually doing bullet number 2 on spending time and energy. We monitor the entire balanced scorecard twice annually. I love this last bullet. Sometimes in school business, we get wrapped up in urgent but not important. It's exacerbated through social media, it's just a fact. And it happens, and you have to do what you have to do. So I'm not saying you don't do something with what's urgent but not important. But the risk we run is we get so focused on urgent, not important, that we don't look at not urgent but very important. Now, these things, this is a long-term goal, 5 years. So that kind of makes it not necessarily urgent, right? Because we have a 5-year horizon. But this is what we've articulated as the most important stuff that we're doing. And y'all may be looking at.
But do we break it down though
Well,
between,
but, so what we're gonna try to focus on tonight, when we get into here, I guess the balanced scorecard, what I was alluding to is really the look ahead for the next 12 months, okay? And we have some long-term targets, but we want to talk through what the next year looks like for us and the work that we're doing, right? So,
Absolutely.
but with the long-term, with that 5-year kind of finish line, if you will, and then we reestablish the next one, right? So,
And there may be pieces in here that, especially the team to my left, feel like are urgent, right? I'm assuming everything that's in here y'all feel is important, right? So there's probably some pieces in here that they feel like are urgent. The thing is, if we're doing these reports the right way, then you all know what they believe is urgent, if that makes sense. Everything that's in here is important, but there's a heightened sense of urgency on this one because whatever, fill in the blank from this team. Okay, does that make sense? And again, I'm not gonna read to you, but just, if you look at number 3, look at number 2, how the action verbs are different between the people to my right and the people to my left. The action verbs on number 2 are envision, systematic monitor, ensure. The action verbs to my left, plan, implement, progress monitor, report. You see how it's a different set of actions that are taken. And I love the operational role. They're implementing, they're progress monitoring, and then they're collaborating with the tactical team and giving feedback to the tactical team. They're monitoring the feedback, and then they're reporting the feedback to the strategic team, if that makes sense. And if you're doing it systematically, you have protocols for that feedback, not just rule by anecdote. And that's kind of the key. And I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to an individual. How many employees do you have?
about 2,000.
So I had a new trustee at Crowley ISD that said, I've started doing my staff interviews. And I said, how many have you done? 3. You have 1,997 to go, you know. Do I need to help you with any of the scheduling, you know? And his jaw just dropped. And so I had to think about that. I'm like, yeah, if you're doing one, you got to do all 2,000. And he's like, well, I'll never. Okay, then let's use our staff satisfaction and engagement survey and let's dig into that. It's true story, by the way. Number 3, you support the other 2 roles by asking good questions. We talked about that. And then number 4, you do your best to try to avoid crossover, confusion between these 3 roles. All right, fair enough. It's just some stuff to read. Then, Catherine, remember, I don't know if y'all remember like the aligned arrows when we started, the model that shows all the arrows going different directions, and then, okay, this is just a verbal description to that model. What's added to it, now that you all are emerging, this is a good introduction to the scorecard, you're emerging into these progress measures and lagging measures that we were just talking about a while ago. I added the results and outputs and outcomes column to this because I felt like at that first conversation that might be too much when we're just trying to get these processes straight to also be thinking. But you're ready now. The district is ready, looking at this scorecard, to think about this as both efficacy to the process, the stuff in the middle, and to the outcome, how we're getting to this final measure. And then all this is just saying, stage 1, we're reacting to problems. Stage 2, we have early systematic approaches. Stage 3, we have aligned approaches. There's a definition as you move across to the right. And then stage 4, we have integrated approaches. And I want to just read the results and outcomes and outputs for stage 4. The full array of results that are important to the organization's ongoing success are reported and trended over time and indicate top performance relative to other organizations. Like that, see, I was afraid if I read that the first night, I wouldn't be back, you know. But now there's a context for that kind of a conversation. And one last thing in way of introduction, I think is really important, especially if I know where we're going at the end of the meeting, not looking at the agenda. you can have a baseline set of targets here that's ubiquitous to like this team and this table and to the district. And then as you align other key documents, i.e. superintendent evaluation, which I think is what we're talking about. And by the way, that's the best practice we get well, in districts all over the state in January right now. It's quick. It's superintendent evaluation time. Get out all that stuff and make me a big PowerPoint. That's happening all over the state, right? Because it's not this, it's different than what the board has, it's like some list that a year ago we looked at. Y'all are doing the opposite of that. You're trying to get that alignment. You can set targets on this base set of targets that they're about to talk about, and then you can set a comparison group target that maybe not is the baseline expectation for the entire district, but it's like this is level 1, this next comparison group is level 2, and this next comparison group is level 3, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we seek out, I'm just going to tell you, in Church Civil Universal City, when I arrived, they were more than happy to just be better than San Antonio and 2 or 3 of our neighbors.
Right.
It was a travesty to me that that was the expectation. When we're at 23% low socioeconomic students, and 4 of our neighbors are at 50% plus, and one of them's at 75% plus. And we're satisfied if we're just being the neighbors. So we saw it out specifically, not with the baseline, but with that, like that level 1 comparison group. Who should we be targeting statewide that looks more like us? Well, we wound up with Rockwall, Dallas, Wiley, okay, not Evelyn Wiley, Dallas Wiley, Tomball. I mean, y'all see, it was these fast growth suburban districts that looked a lot like us. And what was interesting, I will never forget, the first time we put our comparison, the normal line, compared to Region 20, San Antonio, we had the names of the districts masked, but our typical comparison groups, and then we popped the mean in from that that level 1 target group, and that number, or that trend line went over our trend line, higher. And it was just like, you're never satisfied, and no, there's no reason why we shouldn't be outperforming Rockwall. And I just know that there was a point, we had some, tension and all that, but then there was a point like, okay, we're gonna find out what they're doing. And truthfully, I retired because we caught that group in 11 years.
Because what?
We caught that group.
You went out on a high.
That's why, once those lines merged, I was like, I don't know where to go. I'm out. That's exactly, I'm out. But that became like a big target for me to constantly, and it has to be reasonable, and we have more than enough data to do this. I just want to caution you to be very clear about why you're choosing the comparison group. There were some others that we could have put in there, but once we did the analytics on the comparison, it didn't make sense for them to be in there, right?
Such as
Well, like, let's put Eanes ISD in there, because, okay, right, and it was just like, wait a minute, that's not, that's not a fair comparison to SCUs, So just, and there are other indicators, but the percent of low socioeconomic students, is that a fair statement, should be one of your primaries, if you're gonna do some comparison, it should be one of the primary things. We felt like there was a dynamic on fast growth suburban districts. Y'all were of that once, and SCUC, like we were at the front end of that. So we were trying to seek out specifically those that like every year they have 1,000 kids that they didn't have the year before that we're having to figure out our way, right? There are 1,000 great kids, but they were coming from a bunch of different places, and they didn't know how we just did things, if that makes sense. We just have to make pause. If that makes sense, like you can say. So that may not be what this is. Like this, maybe you're gonna hear where these targets are set, but that doesn't mean you can't, especially for superintendent targets and other targets, establish other comparison groups. I'm happy to.
Okay.
I lived that dream, and it was a good thing, it was a positive thing, and but I'm happy to help with that as well.
I think it's important though to recognize that, okay, yeah, maybe you're comparing yourself against, other similar entities, but there's also this, I think, impetus to be better anyway, right, regardless of circumstance. And that's something that I think we want for all of our 2,000 students.
Sure.
That Eames, I think, is a great district to compare ourselves to.
Well, and let me be real clear. The goal of any number that's in here in column 5, we should consider 100% being the ultimate goal. But if we set that as 100% inside a 5-year window, and that's not realistic, then we're gonna lose the front line, gonna lose the front line. We can go over there tomorrow and say, end of this year, you gotta have 100% of kids, whatever, and they're just gonna stare at us. Teachers are just gonna stare at us.
Well, sure.
And they're not gonna
I mean,
take it real.
Yeah,
They're just gonna roll their eyes.
There's a difference between realistic movement, right? Like, we know that when kids come into GCISD, to your point, like the mobility rate, right?
Yeah.
That there's a difference between a kid that, has been here since kindergarten or even preschool versus a kid that just moved here from Nebraska or something, right?
Right.
But I think the end goal should always be that regardless of circumstance.
I agree. I just want to manage expectations that may be in tier 2 of this, the second 5 years, from years 6 to 10, and that may be in years 10 to 15. You just have to be clear. We did 3 4-year plans in SCUC, and it progressively raised in those 3 4-year timelines, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we did a time horizon. And sure, probably if I didn't say I'm out, we would have had to have gone to Eames and, we would have had to have set a different.
Next year.
That's the next year. There's always a next year. And I think that's what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you start talking about something though, that the target is gonna be for the next 5 years, 6 to 10, I mean, that means you lose an entire.
No,
Group
we're saying the same thing, but it's coming out a little bit differently. The step, if we say that 10 years from now, we want to be at a certain point, I see this happen all the time. We perseverate on what that number is, and we never get started on what's the first step. Because that is such a steep climb that we never take step 1. This should be, I think it is, like, what's step 1, step 2?
I mean, if we were celebrating that we were number 4 in the state of Texas, that band is already pretty narrow to begin with, so.
Correct. And I don't know y'all's numbers, and I kind of like it that way, because I'm
Well, it's
just
step
telling you.
4 that are grades. I mean, we've got to get our scores higher. I mean, so hopefully the goal is I'm going to get lots of awards between now and, but those aren't going to be what define us. What define us are going to be the results that we get that we're going to be satisfied with, and,
I think this is similar to that. So we would start winning an award. I'm going to go to perspective 2 on here, or priority 2. So we went top workplace San Antonio just because we decided to get in there, after we were working on staff satisfaction engagement. So up here at the top, we put top workplace San Antonio, you have to win it to get the little logo. And then we won the Comptroller's Financial Transparency Award. That was part of our perspective 4. We put it up here at the top. That changed nothing in this right-hand column. We just kept hitting at these numbers and hitting at these numbers, and then all of a sudden awards started coming, and we started putting them across the top, if that makes sense. All right, fair enough. That makes sense. So looking at the scorecard specifically, well, let me back up. I'm assuming we want to be a stage 4 organization on that one chart, at least. And I may have to. Does that make sense? Like, we want this to be so aligned that it's just harmony. 1.1 means the same thing for the board as it does the tactical team, and even eventually for the front line. And when teachers started saying, hey, Dr. Gibson, come here, I want to show you a 1.3 strategy. We're working on teachers. And I was like, whoa, it's like it's getting out there, right? Because they start just using, and so I would argue, I don't know where you all would self-assess that you were when we started this problem. I'm tempted to ask, but I won't. But I know that this alone can move any organization from 1 to 2. Like you almost cannot be in stage 1 and use this. Like so 1 just got eliminated. I would argue that it probably gets you out of early stage 2 and to late, if we had decimal points in here, like into 2.5, 2.6, like you're getting into that. So you get a bump initially from a systems perspective just by having this. The journey from 1 to 2 and from 2 to 3 can be relatively quick, like a couple of years. The journey from 3 to 4 is the long haul. Is that from stage 3 to stage 4, you've got to stay true to this for a number of years. If that makes sense.
I like, can we get into the,
I'm ready.
yeah.
That's what we're
So, yeah, thank you. And just a couple things I want to kind of preface before we turn it over to the team. First, I want to commend our team for all the work that we've done over the last 6, 7 months to kind of get this off the ground. I know that we've had a lot of great conversation. It's been collaborative on kind of within our team, but it's also been, I hope you felt like it's been collaborative with our board on the strategic and tactical side. We've had a lot of conversations with you guys that have been highly productive in talking through the work, and there's nothing more than we enjoy than talking through the work, and so this is our work. I would like to say that we all own this. I mean, it doesn't matter if, we're in finance or technology, or we all own the priority work here. And so as we go through this tonight, we may start out with, for example, Dr. Schauber may start out with priority 1, but we're going to have some overlap in here because, like, for example, we may hear from Kyle and his team and how they help interject, their work or what they're doing to help us accomplish our academic goals. And so I want us to just kind of go through each priority, and as you guys, have questions or hear some things, and maybe we can kind of rabbit trail a little bit within the performance objectives underneath the priorities. Let's do that. And please give your feedback, your thoughts, or if there's stuff that you've been sitting on for a little bit related to academic achievement or, our staff, our people, community engagement, or fiscal responsibility, stewardship, please, let's talk about all of it tonight. That's the point of this, that collaborative piece. That's why we're here tonight.
And I will capture the dialogue and then debrief with the cabinet team as part of the process.
Okay, so I guess let's kick it off. Dr. Schauber, do you want to kick us off on the priority 1 piece? And I know this will kind of, maybe dovetail with Lisa, Holly, and a few others as we walk through this.
I would love to, Dr. Snell. So the last time that you had a copy of our example scorecard, ultimately this is an expanded version. We started this journey together really this summer, and I believe in August you received that example scorecard. Really that was to serve as we took each key strategic action that we had developed as a team from the priorities and performance objectives that you adopted, and consider what are the most important things that we're working on to improve in the district. We are balancing that between our district improvement plan. So the very specific strategies, this is not to represent everything that's happening on that operational side out on our campuses. That is mostly represented in our district improvement plan and our campus improvement plans. What's represented here is really the overarching goals that we are working toward achieving. So it's really those big rocks that have been identified as initiatives that we're working on to improve. So we've been working with that example for several months. When we've been giving the priority reports and you've been receiving that, it's been based off of that example. What the teams have been doing over the last month is really taking what we've learned from that work. So what should happen naturally is when it comes time to give a priority report, as was referenced earlier, it should be a really natural move from our priority scorecard to what we're going to be reporting to you on those priority reports. And there's actually been a little bit of a struggle, at least in the academic world, around how it was represented in that example and how it comes to life for you in that priority report. So that's been very beneficial to us to really work through that process, have the time to really think about how should it be represented here. In the December board meeting, we presented in our priority report, Priority 1 report, the spring 2024 outcome goals for STAR and EOC, and that was based on the lagging student performance from our prior year. We've also presented and shared with you some of our progress measures and what we look at really day by day or as those assessments are given to determine our progress. What we've been working on since that time is taking those 2024 goals and expanding them out that 5 years, because this is that strategic plan to 2028. A chart has also been shared with you, I believe, in an update, that you can see that 5-year span of those target goals. But for the purpose of our scorecard, this is that horizon that we're moving toward. So that's why the academic team really decided that we would represent our outcome measures. And you see that most of them start by June of 2028. So I'm going to start really with 1.1.1. That is this key strategic action by itself represents what's happening every day in every classroom, academic classroom. And to say that we can represent that here, what we are trying to represent here is the information for you to know where are we pushing to improve. So we vision that our progress, our key strategic actions, our progress measures are going to evolve over time to respond to that improvement that we've made. In fact, that's some of the edits that you're going to be able to see and that I'm going to talk through, because we're already seeing some of that improvement. So you do see that the first outcome measure is noted as by May 2024. That one is a very specific outcome to show progress. Once that's accomplished, so there are going to be some of these outcomes that may, as we have started, it may just be a year out, where most of them from the academic team are that 5-year progress report. So the numbers that you see here represent where we were in 23, and the chart that y'all have seen for our STAR and EOC measures, what we have on that chart for 2028. We will use that chart for our cadence of accountability. So when we have assessments that come in, our academic team, our leadership teams at campuses sit and look at our targets that we've set, look at our progress measures to see how we are working toward accomplishing those. So in that first key strategic action, one of the things that we did add, and you're going to notice some format changes all through this, and that is for clarity for all of us to make sure that we're following along. Number 5 is an added component. This is really going to impact all students across all classrooms, but it is how we are addressing our learning differences in the classroom. So that's an example of a learning. We realize that this is something that we are working on, and that's one that's coming led by Ms. Shockley and her team, and we're collaborating on that. So we're going to talk about a lot of words that Greg's already mentioned as we're moving along these stages, because that is what we are all doing. So aside from the top outcome measure there, the rest of those outcome measures have been added since you've seen the last example, but they go along with the updates the conversations we've been having and what we think is representing some of what you've shared with us. In the first section, because 1.1, 2, and 3 represent all classrooms, but we are specifically calling out reading and math on 2 and 3. You see the target goals for specific to reading and math in numbers 2 and 3. We have set those meets and masters goals. And I will say that part of how we set those goals in future years, even though we don't know how our students have performed yet this year on those measures, we are looking at our comparability groups. So within our accountability system, we get comparability groups that we look at. Those comparability groups within our accountability system are broken into quartiles. We want to be in the top quartile. We are using that now as our measure to set some of these goals because, as an example, if we were setting in quartile 3 in some area, then our goal would be, next step, move to quartile 2. But our long-term goal is we're going to be in quartile 1.
Just if I can clarify something earlier, the levels, when she's talking about the quartiles of the comparison group, when we first started, we didn't have that. And so that's why we went to find, does that make sense? It just hit me, so I wanted to make sure I was clear. Like, we didn't have, I don't remember, that was the 85th legislative session, we lobbied for the accountability, we didn't have that. So we had to go find what now, I'm just now remembering that y'all have now.
So we do use that. Our campuses use that to set their progressive goals, and we use it as a district for, that's how we're looking to see that we're moving toward. Those are moving targets because as we are working to move up in our quartiles, every other district that's in a quartile is looking to try to get to the next one. So that's the part of it that we do have to really understand, that these are goals that we set today. The state could change their accountability system again, and we would need to revisit this. And that's one of the reasons why that we want to be sure that we have kind of those revisions. So the main thing that you see in that first key strategic action is that we've really outlined those outcome measures. Those are numbers that you've seen in charts, but you've not actually seen them written like this. So that's definitely an update in that area. I would also say that what we have, a couple of them are written in a way, term used annually. So there are some areas that we really don't have, say, baseline data. And it's a group, because of mobility, that may change from year to year. So we really can't set that standing target of 1% to another. What we are looking for is a growth measure. So when we are looking for a growth measure on our academic goals, we use the term annually to designate that, to show, hey, we're looking for a certain % of growth in that group. And that is why we use the term annually there, and we didn't set it necessarily at that 5-year mark. Then looking at, we're gonna skip around just a little bit because there are a couple of components of 1.2 that Dr. Ray will address when she's giving her updates. They're specific to her team.
To 1.2, if you don't mind, on 1.1, so this is great. So one key strategic action, 1.1.1, is the building of this curriculum management plan. So the progress measures are really progress measures on the building of the plan, right?
Yes.
So once it's built, this is just food for thought. One could say, well, that's standard operating procedure now, so we'll just take that 1.1.1 key strategic. Okay, if you want to leave it on there, I saw your head already nodding.
Yeah, we've got a plan. We've got a plan.
Well, and there are ways to measure, are they using it, right? We're surveying our lead teachers, and are you using the plan? That's your lead measure. Okay, y'all have already talked about
We've
that.
already talked
Okay,
about
I think that's-
communication, implementation, and fidelity.
Yeah.
So I had a question on that piece, right? So the outcome measures why is there not an outcome measure for the CMP? Because my expectation would be almost exactly what you said, like by May 2024, the plan will be complete.
I think you
by-
could easily add,
By
like
blah, blah,
that.
blah.
So we have the first one, by May 2024, it'll be complete.
Okay,
When we
Okay.
revisit this and that one is complete, we will have a by May of 2025, which will look at that fidelity of implementation.
that's beautiful.
okay, so X% of teachers will.
When
be
anonymously asked,
elected.
reported that there's,
Yes,
yes, that's.
and some of
good.
that data, that'll actually come from classroom walkthroughs and observations. So there'll be multiple aspects of data. We really did kind of make a conscious choice that we're creating it now. What we did veer against, which was putting an outcome measure on here that we're not actively working on right now. So that's why we made the decision to not represent what happens next on that one, but that will be an update that we would bring as we've completed that one of May of '24. We'd roll to the next phase of that for the following year.
Okay, so you could almost kind of put like a dotted line between progress measure 1 and progress measure 2. In the fourth column, right?
Well,
So
in-
create the CMP.
Yeah, I think y'all are saying at some point in the future, 1, 2, 3, 4, and
All right.
5 will go away, and
Very
then it'll be
likely.
It'll be
replaced
replaced
with
with the next
Yes.
phase,
whatever.
right?
We would have it, if
All
you,
of that will be, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will go away after May of 2024.
possibly, we'll
If you're
assess it.
there, yeah.
And I mean, right, if we hit the measure, right, of May of 2024.
And then what we would see, next year's phase would be more about the implementation, the checking of fidelity, the monitoring of the effectiveness, and then the outcome measure would reflect that, the usage of that and the communication.
That's
for it.
So
wonderful,
I have a
good
question
example, thank you.
on that then. So on the key strategic actions, since this is a 5-year plan, should there not also, should it maybe say complete and implement?
It could,
Because
it
the
definitely
way this
is.
is reading, it's leading me to think, okay, we've got 5 years,
Um,
but the
Design and
outcome measure is
systematically
only saying.
deploy.
So
yeah.
I will let you know that on my copy of our edits, it does actually say complete and implement
Okay,
A.
there you go.
That edit
Beautiful.
did not get in.
That's a great
The-
conversation.
The other question that I had on this is, since this is the piece that is looking at student achievement, academic growth and development. I absolutely get the discussion on the quartiles, the 5-year plan as far as, you know, the targets that are set up for that, the differences between meets grade level and masters. But my question here then is, where in this will we reflect the commitment of academic and growth and development to the students who are already at masters?
So there are going to be some of the ones that are noted as an annually and a percentage of growth. There are a couple of ways that that's in there. Let me talk through them and come back to that.
I saw though that you had AP scores
Got
and stuff
1.1.
like
Yes.
that.
That's gonna be farther.
That's where my
Yeah.
mind went when I was hearing.
Yeah.
In part of our CCMR, which is the next one to get to, there's definitely some of those advanced goals that we're monitoring and setting there.
Do you, on the edit that's on your computer, complete and implement, I heard y'all use the word fidelity, so implement with fidelity.
We see the with, yes, so we could put that in there so that it's ready for the next phase.
That's what you got, the wording of it is ready for the next phase. That's a really good example, superintendent, if you start peeling it back, and then the words start tweaking a little bit, because we're getting deeper into it.
And that's what meeting on a regular basis and talking about it,
Yeah.
so it's starting to come to fruition.
Yep. I'm gonna shut it.
All right, so when we get to 1.2 under college and/or career and/or military readiness, and that's very specific because they can all happen. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And this is an example. So you will notice under the progress measures, and this is one, this college readiness, that is certainly one that represents what we refer to as our advanced academics. While you have seen kind of our initial phases of just overall goals that we've set, What we are still calibrating and collaborating on are some of our more specific goals around, say, special populations, our special education students, our bilingual students, our advanced academics and AP classes. So those are going to be represented, what I refer to as an addendum, which are our specific goals that we're looking to meet and by what intervals that we use for our data, basically checks. Anytime we get in data, checking to see where are we on progress. But it is represented, and this is a new one, the second outcome measure represented there by June of 2028. They will be in the top quartile of our comparability groups. So you heard that referenced earlier. That's us saying our standard of performance is in that top quartile. For SAT performance and participation, and that's another miss that should say, and ACT. Performance and participation, as well as AP exam performance and participation. So that is one example of how we're looking for, how are we advancing our scholars and monitoring that.
Can I note something, and maybe the board is aware of this, but if you did not add the and participation to this, then you could game this goal. And I mean, one of the best ways to raise your mean score on your SAT is to exclude anyone from taking it that.
You don't already know what they're
People
going to
did it,
score.
right, and people do it all the time. So the fact that you're saying performance and participation, got a board trustees, like, that's really important that you're trying to do both of those. And if y'all find some outlier that's way up there, I say check and see how many kids are taking it. Because every time we did that, we found out they were tightening up the kids taking it, and we felt like that was just wrong. We've got to let every kid have an opportunity to take it. So our mean score moved up slower the more we had participating, but we were trying to get both.
And college readiness is not for any specific groups of students. We're looking at that for all of our students. So that's why it has been an ongoing goal for our district, that it's not exclusive participation, but we're looking at global participation when we look at that. So that is one representation of, I believe, what you're referencing. Moving now, stop me if I'm skipping something, to the third page, which is 1.4, and student involved, or no, I missed one. It's under safety and well-being. It's 1.3.2. And the reason for the skipping around is I'm talking about all of the academic team components. And as was mentioned before, we have pieces in all priorities as we collaborate together. So this one is addressing really the multi-tiered systems of support for our students. That is, do they need interventions? Are they prepared and ready to learn? This is the aspect and contribute to an effective learning environment. So you see those progress measures there, and this is one that is mentioned annually. Part of what we know is going to happen, we have mobility. We don't have the same students year after year. We know each year we're going to have students in every grade level and really in every content that are struggling for some reason or another, and they may be in a tiered level of support. We know that's not going to stay constant, and that's why we've noted that with an annual gain, because the students that are represented each year from one year to the next will be different students. Because if we've made the percentage gains this year, then those students are in a different tier the following year, and we're talking about a different group of students. That's why that one is not appropriate to say, hey, we're at 75% now, we're going to be at 85% next year, because it's completely different, should be a different group of students. Noting changes that we've made, I want to move to now 1.4.
One of the things that you'll note in 1.4, and it really starts under the key strategic action, all of them say for all students to engage in co-curricular and/or extracurricular. That's an important designation as we look at what our students are participating and involved in. And we are looking for really that right now we need a baseline. So you'll notice in 1.4.1, we're establishing a baseline. We need to really determine using the data that we have, where are we now? And so what you will see in future years is that will change from develop a baseline to now that we have our baseline, we will set our target for how we're going to improve it. And there are also some aspects within priority.
Can I just ask a question on that, the extracurricular and athletics? If we want to continue to increase participation, I'm assuming we're going to add teams, because there's only so many people that can play on.
So if you're speaking specifically to athletics, I'm going to let that fall with Dr. Ray when she speaks about her updates.
Okay.
For the student involvement, we're really, that expands between co-curricular and extracurricular. That's going to be involvement in clubs, involvement in things more than, say, teams and athletics, and that's why it kind of stands out there in that involvement. But I'll let her speak to that whenever she's doing her updates. There are aspects of the support that we provide to our staff to be prepared, to have the skills and knowledge to present in the classroom and engage our learners for all of the things that we talked about academically. So there are some things in that from the academic team that are specific to preparing our instructional team to meet the needs of kids that are represented. One of those that I will pull out will be in priority 2. And it is 2.2.2, where we are promoting employees with ongoing coaching and professional development to continuously improve teaching practices, pedagogy focused on individual employees' professional growth. Number 4 is an added progress measure. We know that one item that we are really focusing on under Dr. Petavilla's leadership is just the induction for new teachers. Brand new teachers to GCISD. What support do we give them to be successful in the classroom? And we know that that's a progress measure that we've got to check on incrementally through the year and continuously provide support. But you see that in the outcome, in how we measure it, specifically question 12 on the Gallup survey. There are items in that Gallup survey that can really hit on, are we attending to a new teacher's needs around how they support the needs of our students in the classroom. So
this is the best practice. Even though 2.2.2 links right up with priority 1, you've kept it in the staff perspective, because when you put them together, the measures start getting squishy, and you can't really get so granular as to y'all. That's the first time I've heard question 6, 11, 12 on Gallup was tonight, and I thought it was coming. Because I knew somewhere you had some way that you felt like you could measure that efficacy, and so anyway, that's awesome.
I think you said we were very advanced. Thank you.
That is what I'm saying. You peeled it back and you found where that is. My point is, if you leave 2.2, if you don't put it down as its own, it just gets rolled up into some other stuff and we don't really get to it. By bringing it down here as a standalone, we get real granular. And that's where you really move the needle, is when you get really granular. So yes, it's awesome.
So I think that wraps up really providing you some updates on how the scorecard has really advanced as we've worked on it the last several months. And I've tried to highlight what we changed from when you've seen it as an example before. So that it is working more toward the condition that it's going to really represent. There still will be some changes because there's some things we're setting baselines on that we'll address. And as we meet a big initiative like that curriculum management plan, it will adjust to be more fidelity of implementation. So there'll still be some changes made there.
And you have any number of, thumbing through it earlier, of examples similar to that curriculum management plan, where you're establishing a baseline or creating the whatever, that strategic action becomes something else once it's implemented.
Dr. Ray, will you talk through CCMR? Because I know that's a big
Yes.
piece that's woven in priority 1 and priority 3. And then with the addition of, Stephanie Speaks on board, and Katie and just the team, and I know they have a lot of things in the works where we're going to take this thing off on the CTE side, but also on the CCMR side, right?
So just a reminder that college and career and the CCMR is just a massive umbrella. So when you're thinking about it, it's like there's all these little strands that hang down from that. So that it does include advanced academics, includes CTE, it includes the military piece. So there's all these different strands that are encompassed under this umbrella. So we all overlap in one way or another. So there's a lot of conversations that take place in terms of college, career, and military readiness. So some of the differences that you're going to see, one, Dr. Scheiber has already really talked through 1.2.1 in terms of our college readiness, what our performance is going to be in terms of the quartile. But we met as a CCMR task force and did our best to create a 5-year plan. Currently, our seniors from last year, because the state changed the accountability system, we were at 69%. That will be factored into our accountability this year because it's lagging data. And so there's nothing we can do to unscramble the eggs for the 23 graduates, but we are working diligently on our current seniors right now and then working backwards from there. So when we began to look at our data and anticipate where we could be, although we do anticipate we will be at this target sooner, we did say that by 2028, our CCMR indicator for students would increase from 69% to 90%, which takes us to the A. So that really means that our current 8th graders, it's like taking our current 8th graders right now who will be freshmen, they're lagging data, they will be the class that will take us to 90%. That's kind of how we were looking at it because of the lagging data. And so we continued, so that is how we came to our scores. We anticipate that by the end of this year, just looking at our best predictions, because you do not earn a CCMR point until you graduate. And so looking at our CCMR data trackers that our counselors are using at the high schools right now, we are estimating that next year we will be at 75%. So, and then we just increased it incrementally from there. But again, we are being intentional, we are being purposeful, so it would not be surprising for us to surpass that. The second thing, under 1.2.2, we called out career and workforce readiness because often the workforce readiness implies something different than just a career. And so we separated those two words to include both career and workforce readiness. We changed some of our goals in here. One of them was to clarify the CTE courses and pathways. So we have, if you saw the course selection guide, you probably saw a spreadsheet that said, revisions, deletions, and additions. Much of that was work of the CTE programs. So to clean up those pathways so students have a clear pathway, really starting in the 8th grade with those principles classes, which leads to an increased number of students completing a coherent sequence aligned with an industry-based certification. And then we began to, we want to increase the number of students participating in work-based learning courses, which are those higher level practicum courses. But again, working backwards, right now we have worked all the way back to the junior high with a 7th grade project-based research course that we are implementing to expose them to to different careers that they might be interested in. But we want to take that down to the elementary school. They have career day, but we want to begin to bring some of the high school students down to talk about some of the things that they're doing. So all of this kind of folds together under that CCMR umbrella so that students have early exposure to the opportunities that they have later on in their educational career. And then on 1.2.3, you'll notice it, originally this said establish a CCMR task force. We did that. On October of 2023, we met for the first time. And so we changed that goal now to a CCMR, our CCMR task force will monitor progress towards our CCMR goals and implement strategies to increase opportunities for students to demonstrate college, career, and/or military readiness. So there are two pieces of this that were not there prior to this because it was just about establishing the task force. One of them is monitoring the data, and we have started that process. We just we have a CCMR data tracker, so we know from the beginning of the year to January right now where we stand and how many students are positioned to earn their CCMR point after graduation. And then our goal is to create a one-page strategic plan for the 24-25 school year to say, okay, these are the things that we are going to do strategically to increase opportunities for students to earn their CCMR point. And then finally, down at the bottom, this stayed the same. The wording is a little bit different, but just ensuring that students have exposure to all branches of the military and that we have a strategic plan because that has not been a practice yet to collect those DD4 forms because those are collected after they graduate. And so we need a strategic plan to be able to do that. So we'll be talking through that and then continuing to monitor ASVAB participation. So these are the things that our task force has worked on together. So again, in the formative stages, but very excited about the progress that we've made in a very short period of time. So from there, if you go over to 1.4 under student involvement, I worked with both our athletics and fine arts director on 1.4.2 and 1.4.3. And so you asked a question. We are wanting to increase the participation because you're right, some teams do have a limit on them. And yes, we have added C teams. We've also added fall tennis. So we're continuing to add opportunities for students to be involved, and it is benefiting our students greatly. And then for the participation and performance in fine arts, we would like for them to stay in that fine arts track for 2 years consecutively. So sometimes they make other decisions, but we're working on recruitment and retention so that they stay from 8th grade on into their 9th and 10th grade year into that fine arts that they have committed to. So those are areas where we're working on. The recruiting part will begin this spring, and we're still talking through some strategies for that.
So can I ask you a question on that? So I know that there are some schools that have struggled to get coaches. And some of the coaching instruction might be lacking in certain sports. So how are we, which I then kind of shift to y'all, how are we addressing, we're adding more teams, getting more participation, how are we addressing kind of a coaching gap, if you will, or a lack of coaching at each of the different schools?
So that would probably be a conversation you and I need to have further, because right now, where we're sitting with coaches, we do currently have the staff to meet the needs of those C teams. And so if that is an issue, then I would welcome that conversation with you.
We have coaches, but we're pulling people from middle school to come coach high school teams, and we're moving, some people that aren't in a certain middle school are going here,
Sure.
there, and some of them who have no business coaching certain sports, and they've self-admitted that, are coaching those sports. So my concern is, while we're getting participation, the quality of that instruction is only as good as the coach. So if we want to continue to keep people in those activities, we need to ensure that that coaching and that instruction is as good as we possibly can. Because a coach, as anybody in here knows who has played sports, coach can make or break whether or not you continue to participate in that activity going forward. So if we want to continue to grow that, which is why Colleyville Heritage Girls is just, no. But that's something that I think, which would shift here as well, is ensuring that quality of instruction, and that we're incentivizing folks to do that, because it's a lot of extra work for the stipend. I don't know necessarily covers the extra work and effort that's put in for all of those coaches.
This conversation is really good, and we were constantly, for 11 years, at this battle between quantity and quality on this scope, or the closest thing we had to this. It's just like, that was the perennial thing, that we were just, but the fact that we were checking it and monitoring it and measuring it, and I think I told you all, I asked when I arrived in NCUC how many kids were in co-curricular and extracurricular activities, and they told me 98%. And so that was at my first meeting with the senior leader team. So I said, well, go count it, and then let's look at, well, it was 62%. Just a 30% gap. And, and so their hat was in their hand, and they came back. I said, well, how'd you miss it? And they said, truthfully, we've talked about it, and we thought it was like 90% of the kids we knew.
We knew.
The point, like, it was the point of, so when we started trying to take this kid that, wasn't in and get them to get involved, we constantly battled with it. Now we got more kids coming in. And so it's going to be a battle. I mean, like that quality versus quantity.
Well, and I
What is
think,
our percent? Pardon, our percent of.
I don't have that right off.
By May 2024, establish a baseline.
We are,
So,
yeah.
Okay, that's fair, that's
It's right
fair.
there.
All right, so May,
Yes, yes.
Well, and
Absolutely.
that number was kind of wobbly the whole
It
time I was
was.
there. So what I'm saying it will be, because it's hard. There's a lot of nuance to asking what qualifies and what doesn't qualify, and how long do they have to be in. If they're in and then they're out, do we count them? So they've got a lot. On that baseline, it's kind of complicated to establish.
and I get, it's super important. Like, the more extracurricular activities, whether it's fine arts, clubs, sports, is huge. It increases your love of where you're at, what you're doing. It increases your participation. It keeps people out of trouble when they have stuff to do, which is why my daughter is busy. She has like 2 full-time jobs outside of school, keep her out of trouble. And so, but I want to get back to that, just making sure that we do have that quality of instruction to foster that love of whatever the activity we're trying to get students involved into.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want them to try out for football or basketball or tennis or whatever, and they're part of a team, but it's not fun, and they're not gaining anything or growing from it, and then the next year, they're out. I'd rather see us foster that where we have a level of competition when they're getting to the high school, 9, JV, varsity, where it's tough to dwindle down to that number that can make the team, but still having something for those kids. So just want to make sure we're addressing that. And even though we have to, like you said, I know we have people in that role, doesn't necessarily mean that it's beneficial for them or for the student athletes or the fine arts kids or the clubs. So just making sure we're.
AJ and I sat next to each other at a basketball game on Friday, and we had quite a conversation about that.
So does that fall under you or the athletic director?
So, so this, yeah,
So
so
AJ's question, well,
What's both?
Yes.
There's,
She supports Todd.
right.
I do.
I get that, but so then we're, I guess, stop.
But that's why I love the balanced approach, because now you've got a director of kind of quasi-instruction and the athletic director and even the HR department now looking at this same thing. And it's one metric that we're trying to talk about rather than we're all just in our silos looking at it from our singular viewpoint. We have an integrated approach to it.
So kind of to also touch AJ's point, you touched on the fine arts and wanting to keep kids involved. in the ninth and 10th grade years. So where on this do we so we just have right now, by 2028, will increase the single area fine arts by 5%. But where do you capture in here what the barrier is to kids staying in fine arts for less than 2 years? Like that's, it's not even mentioned here, so where we can capture that?
So I'm wondering if this doesn't go back to, in some of the baseline data here, doesn't go back, one, to looking at the data from what the district has used previously with the quality cup and seeing, and then now doing some historical trends to see where students actually, where are they going from year to year? What is growing from year to year? What might be declining from year to year? So this is just right now, as I spoke with the executive director of athletics and the director of fine arts, we felt like we just knew at this point we wanted them to stay in the program for 2 years. We will work on what the barriers are. So I don't know if I want to nail those down at this moment, but I certainly can, we can follow up with that.
Well, because, I mean, so I would think that somehow that identifying what the barrier is would have to be a part of this, so that you can know if you can achieve that. So just quantifying the number of people participating doesn't tell you why there's that particular number of people participating, nor does it identify what the trend is or why that trend is happening.
Well, one, I
And
think,
so one of the,
okay, I'm
one
sorry.
of the things that comes to mind immediately is that the high school classes are about 100 students less than what they were 5 years ago. And so if 100 kids in ninth grade are missing and 100 kids in 10th grade and so on, well now, I mean, you simply don't have 10 trombonists to choose from, you've only got 5. And so I'm not seeing how this particular outcome measure would capture and identify that, since we know that the high school population at both high schools has dropped so dramatically.
Right. Well, and I think, so that's what I was going at. Once you know who's in baseline, then you know who's out. When you survey who's out regarding barriers. I mean, that's, like, and then and we're systematically every year surveying those that are not choosing to be in so that we know what those barriers are through their perception. It's a perception survey.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
And then my next question is, so, you've got a goal for 2026 for athletics and a goal for fine arts, but you only establish a baseline for participation and performance in the co-curricular and extracurricular, and so you don't have, where would we put a similar goal for FFA, for DECA, for debate and oral where, because those aren't athletics nor are they.
I think they would be under the extra and co-curricular, because a lot of those are.
Well, right, but we didn't list a by 2026.
Because we're establishing the baseline
Right. I mean, that would
first,
be after.
and then we would replace that with a,
National.
So are we
Excellent.
saying that we already know what the baseline is for athletics and fine arts?
No.
Okay, well then should that not also be on? Or is that the I guess I'm a little confused because column 4 is pretty consistent, monitor participation and.
Oh, it includes
Right.
it, yeah.
But then when you get to the last column, you just establish a baseline for co-curricular and extracurricular, but you don't establish a baseline for athletics or fine arts, and you don't have a target goal for extracurricular.
So I'm going to use a positive presupposition here that as this one gets more mature, the aligning systems, that those things get more granular, probably looking more like what we historically had to work on student performance, and then they start calibrating with each other. I mean, again, I said at the very onset, don't forget to celebrate what you have. Because I bet if I asked everyone in this room a year ago, how do y'all do an extracurricular? Everybody would give me a thumbs up.
Well, I guess.
But now we know that we're measuring how many are in, what does quality mean, what are the barriers to kids getting out?
But I guess kind of going off what AJ was saying, right? So if we're just saying we're gonna increase the participation in athletics by 5%, but if we determine, well, that means D teams for basketball, and it's not actually possible because we don't have 4 coaches and no way to transport kids and find other schools to participate. I just don't know why we're not mirroring the same thing established
Yeah,
based on
you-
participation.
So how long
blah, blah,
has
blah.
Grapevine Colleyville worked on 1.1? Not the scorecard, but on 1.1? Just robust
Like
work,
before.
like before?
Yeah.
50 years, 100 years,
I was like,
right?
why, since 18.
Yeah, 1870, that's right. And then,
Today,
but you, and then before the adoption of this, you weren't specifically looking at 1.4 as a separate thing. And I heard on CCMR, you put an action team around 1.2, is that right? Like y'all built an action team, like now we all own it, but y'all own it a lot, right? That team owns it a lot. So now what I'm hearing is the emergence of an action team around 1.4 also.
Yeah, I guess.
Do you see?
I'm good with that.
But then this base version, once the action team is around that 1.4, it starts getting a lot more robust, I guess is my point.
I guess it's just like, I'll just use an example, right? Establish a baseline participation and performance in fine arts. You know that to build a marching band, you have to have flutists, trombonists, trumpet, whatever, right? And so I guess I would think that would actually just be kind of easy to put this in there. If you're gonna field a football team, then I wouldn't do it in my hometown school. They no longer had 11 boys, so they literally could not do
Yeah,
11-man football. So I guess I just kind of feel like
This is
we've got
where
a target percentage here, but we don't know.
strategic role, if I may real quickly, and I won't let.
No,
So the strategic role is giving feedback to say, how can we be more systematic about 1.4? Your tactical team is giving the first cut at that, basically. When I said an action team around 1.4, I heard, oh, yeah, we did that for CCMR, why wouldn't we do it for 1.4? So my point with all that is, these are good questions, they stimulate thinking, and I would assume that there's notes taken tonight that then come back for 1.4 to just get more robust and more robust. Y'all just gonna
Well, and
keep,
that's the
you're just
thing,
gonna
is
peel it
when
back.
we move forward in time, this is gonna be fluid and it's gonna evolve. And so, as you guys have already seen in 6 months, this looks different than what it did when we first got it to you in August, September, whatever that was. You know, and I wanna go back to the point on, go back to the coaching piece. It's becoming more difficult, and I'll just go with female coaches. I mean, that pool, that sample pool, they're just few and far between, especially the ones that are really good, right? So you can imagine if that pool is small, and we have some strong districts around us up here in the Metroplex, and so we're all competing, and so there are some things, and as I mentioned, this overlaps in like HR. We've had a lot of conversations as we try to replace female coaches every year, that we have to try to get creative and have extensive forethought on how can we kind of put ourselves in a competitive advantage against whomever, our neighbors, whomever that may be. And so that will continue to happen. We'll have to adjust things and, talk through whatever that looks like. But those are things that, like, to your point, those are things that are probably to come, in the future. And maybe that's in 2 months when we get into hiring season, or realize, we've got to address this. That becomes urgent, because when you're talking about getting quality people, good people that will connect with our kids and teach them a content or a discipline or a sport. I mean, that's highly important. Just that just somebody with a pulse and a warm body, right? And so I'm with you. We want to, especially at the middle schools, we want to maximize participation, I'll say. because that's where kids figured out. You know, I have a son going into 6th grade next year, so I'm excited about him trying everything. I can tell you, his DNA is gonna, inhibit him in some areas, and he gets that, honestly, we won't go into that, but I want him to try all the sports, and so, if Will Schnauz is on a C team in a sport, man, he's gonna be the best he can be on that C team, and we need to have a coach then that can pull that out of him, right? And so, we're committed to that, it's just now, going against the constraints, okay, given the sample size out there that's diminishing, but also too, the need to fill in a 7th grade C team basketball. But, I mean, those are things that we'll kind of talk about. Dave, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think, particularly if you look at the middle school setting, where predominantly our coaches are assigned to 3 sports. On the girls' side, primarily volleyball, basketball, track, maybe a cross-country thrown in there. I mean, there's some wiggle room in there, and Todd's worked closely with us about trying to spread some of those out. To find someone that is fully skilled in everything football, fully skilled in everything basketball, can coach triple jump, and also teach ELA. Those are hard things. So, as I'm just taking notes over here, and I'm thinking from, principal lens as well, as, what are some things that we could possibly do for mentoring? Can we pull some high school coaches that lead some mentoring sessions for some of our young new coaches? Because that's a hard business for sure.
No, and creating, like you just said, kind of creating a pipeline.
Yeah.
Where you're getting that, and as they're moving through the ranks and coming up, they actually have, you have a system in place from the top down. The coaches are implementing whatever sport moving forward is a great idea, but it's just, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback from the C team stuff because parents are excited about it, kids are excited about it, but then I'm also hearing as you're getting, like you said, you're pulling these resources every which way.
Yeah.
In some levels, with some of the folks that I've chatted with, the instruction, and it's at the high school level too, it's not just in the middle school. The instruction isn't what they would be hoping for in some of these sports, and so it is doing some a disservice, and it's doing the program overall a disservice. As
on that pipeline,
so it's just.
It's good feedback.
Yeah, just some food for thought, but I think you guys are doing great work, and the implementation is wonderful. Just curious of how we're gonna, close that gap.
I want you to hear, we strive for improvement and raising the bar. I do want to commend our coaches for the work that they do. I mean, it's not by accident that our kids were able to see the results of being in top 20 in both high schools in the Lone Star Cup. We have great kids. I hear me say that, and great families, but man, our coaches are outstanding too, collectively speaking, right? And so they invest so much time and just their lives to do that. And so we want to make sure that we continue to find the best fit that then meet our expectations that we already have established, right?
Oh, yeah, and I will say that selection is not just for kids.
Oh,
For those time.
absolutely not. And they don't do it for the stipend.
No, of course.
No, don't break that down to hours.
It just,
To the point of what really, to top up what y'all are saying, I'm sure there's not a coach that's asked to coach a team that is way out of their comfort zone, out of their area. They don't like that either. It's just,
I will say, sometimes we have just an extenuating circumstance where we have somebody that says, hey, I'll fill this spot, and I don't have any maybe playing experience in volleyball, but I'm going to go do my best, and they're going to learn it, kind of drinking out of the fire hydrant to do what's best for, try to make it a great experience for the kids. And so there are some gaps there as far as content knowledge, but YouTube, yeah.
I went to girls wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. McMullen was a wrestling coach.
And my second sport was girls wrestling. And the expectation was that you learn it and you grow, but I knew I was never going to be a Hall of Fame wrestling coach like I was working with, but I did my best to learn it. So I know our coaches always, they do the same.
But to y'all's points, like we're noting this, and that's something that I can tell you though, on the coaching piece, those conversations happen probably once or twice a week, and especially as we get closer into the peak hiring season. I mean, that's at the forefront because they are unicorns. I mean, not only do they coach, but they teach important academic sections in the schedule that first and foremost, they have to be solid in the classroom. That's where we need them, to be strong.
So thank you for the feedback. Certainly appreciate it. And, just having been a middle school principal, I just want to reiterate, especially there, it is about opportunity. It's about the opportunity to try all the things and figure out what you want, whether you're on the A team or the C team. And so, and that's really what we want to offer our kids, especially at that level. And then they start to make and refine those choices as they go. But I love the fact that we can offer those opportunities to our students because I do think that is a key piece for our middle school students especially. The last piece that I have is under 3.3, and this goes to CTE. So this is our corporate and business-based partnerships. 3.3.1 is to develop a partnership between CTE and local chambers of commerce and other community organizations. We are in the process of doing that right now to strengthen our relationship with the chambers, the Rotary, and other local organizations for our CTE students to benefit through community involvement and internship experiences. And if you were able to attend at all Leadership Day with Grapevine Collegeville and Collegeville ISD, I would love to tell you, if you have time, stories from how our community members reached out to our students to offer them internship opportunities, gave them their business cards. We could not ask for more. And so, already we are building an incredible partnership with the community for those opportunities for our students. And then under 3.3.2, to select an executive, we established a CTE advisory board. So that we had our first CTE advisory board meeting in January. It was so exciting to see our community members there. They were excited to be there. They came from all walks of life. Some of them had already were involved in our CTE program and had interns. So they are now on the board. Others of them were just joining for the first time and learning about CTE, but wanting to offer those opportunities, and they'll be able to speak into our program. So our next steps with that, you'll see the goal has changed. We are in the process of selecting an executive board, writing the bylaws, and then calendaring meetings and gathering input on our CTE programs from these experts in the field. So by the end of the 23-24 school year, the CTE Advisory Executive Board will be established. This is the outcome. The bylaws will be in place, and input for the 24-25 school year will be gathered from the CTE Advisory Board. And then you'll see that we have already completed the second goal, which is to create a CTE Advisory Board. So just very excited about how quickly that moved.
So similar to the earlier conversation, once that's established, I would assume they can determine, what are good metrics for internships and, like how do we measure success with this?
So one of the things I want to point out on this executive board, this excites me because what this means for our kids is opportunity. It's going to get them outside of, the school setting into a professional setting, and they're going to find something that they're passionate about, something that they can get real world practical experience that they can then possibly apply into something. Maybe it's what they aspire to do. And that's what we want, is to provide that hook and that connection and that experience and the contact, the network. But the one thing, kudos to Dr. Ray, to Stephanie, to Katie, to that team for getting out there. We have folks in our community who are like eager to help our students. And it's like, well, I didn't know. And you start pairing, Stephanie and her team who are going out and meeting folks who are able to offer opportunities to our kids. Now great things are going to happen. And so we're excited to see this executive board kind of take off that advisory piece. So.
Did you send anything out on that, Holly? Did you send anything to us?
About the CTE Advisory Board in the board update? I honestly,
I don't remember seeing
I don't believe that I did, but I'd be happy to send you a summary of it.
Can I add because I'm lucky enough to be on this board, and I walked out of that meeting that day thinking, there's going to be more people that want to participate in this than we have room for our board.
I thought you did a great job on Thursday. That was very well put together.
And the caliber of people that Stephanie reached out to get in this room, I am so excited about all of it. So. Mercedes, or the whole team is fantastic.
Make, in the January meeting, like,
February.
no, the one that we have coming up.
Oh, we're in Vegas.
No, you talk about that.
Keep it up there.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we're glad to.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ray. Now, can we move to priority 2? Are y'all good with that? And so Kelly Davis here to kind of assist Kelly, as she's somewhat new on the job. And so thank you, Dave, for being here. But will you guys walk us through priority 2?
Sure. Thank you for giving me a little bit of grace. I've been on the job 2 weeks now, and so I really haven't had a lot of time to dive deep into this balanced scorecard, but I have reviewed what we have done and what was input on the scorecard before. And just looking at it from a different lens, because I have been in human resources for 25 years, I've worked a lot with recruitment and retention of staff. And so these are some strategies that I've input here that I've seen tried and true from other districts and things that I've done in districts that I've been in and would really be excited to implement here in GCISD. So the first one with 2.1.1, we have a goal of increasing the number of job fairs hosted and attended so that we can recruit across the state and other states. And I think in order to do that first, we need to establish some data of where we're getting our new hires, like where are we finding the most bang for our buck. Instead of just randomly selecting a number of job fairs and saying we're going to attend 20 up from 15, we really need to target where we're getting the most of our new hires. And so that's what we'll do, is establish some baseline data this year from our new hires that we hire for 24, 25 to determine where are they coming from, where are we seeing the most benefit, and then really target those colleges and universities of areas that we're going to recruit. Also making sure that when we have hard to fill positions that we don't have the applicant pool like we would like to get those high quality candidates. What are some of the colleges and universities around us that produce candidates that have positions that would have students for positions for us to hire? For example, like ESL bilingual, special education. What are some of the top programs that universities have that really target those areas that are hard to fill? Recruiting and hiring has become a very big challenge for school districts across the state of Texas, really across the country. And so we're all competing for the same top talent. So how do we as a district make sure we stand out amongst when especially in the DFW area, applicants can choose to go in a variety of places and only drive 30 to 45 minutes if they choose to go to someplace else. And then 2.1.2, expanding the relationships with universities and colleges and alternative programs to assist with recruiting high quality talent. What I really liked about this strategy was the word relationships. And I think that's what you have to establish first before you get the universities and the colleges to start recommending applicants come to your district. It's going to be important for us to reach out to them proactively to start building those relationships with the universities. That's going to them, meeting one-on-one, getting to know about the candidates that they're producing at the universities, letting them get to know us a little bit better, what makes us unique and special, why should they promote our district over the other districts in our area where they can students to. So really it's building those relationships first and discussing ways that we can increase student teachers in GCISD. You have a great relationship with a university when that university wants to send your student teachers to your district. And so I know we host student teachers currently in our district, but it's about increasing the number that we have. We've seen across the state that the enrollment in education, the traditional education programs have decreased. And so the competitiveness to get student teachers is really even more so now than it ever used to be. So that's one way, is to build those relationships. I've seen, and I would be open to this, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to even go into some of those universities and maybe teach some interviewing classes or resume building classes, things like that. And all of that just helps build the relationships that you have with those universities, and in turn, they would promote our district when choosing where to send their student teachers. And then also it's important to really sell our district to these young graduates that are just coming out of college. When we attend university job fairs, they want to see people that they identify with. Yes, we're going to send principals and supervisors to recruit, but they really want to see people just like them. There's nothing more intimidating than going to a university job fair and seeing a lot of, I will say veteran, not older, but veteran educators there in their suits and their ties, and I'm looking at myself too. That is nothing more intimidating than going up to a table with people who have, so many years of experience, and you wanting to sell yourself and listen to what the district has to offer. So I've flipped it a little bit in recent years and had really some of our younger teachers really be those people to recruit for us. Maybe they are a recent graduate and they're an alumni of the university. Maybe they have something that they did at that university where they were in the same club or organization, like a fraternity, a sorority. That builds that initial connection to get those people to the table, and they can talk about the reasons why they chose GCISD as a place to work. Then you can send them to the supervisors and the principals to make sure they're a good fit and have the knowledge and skills to do the job. It's just getting them to the table and building those connections. Connections is what's super important when we start getting people to want to come to GCISD for employment. And so that's one of the strategies that I've seen work and want to help incorporate in our district. A lot of the outcome measures, I will say, I haven't had a lot of time to spend on outcome measures because I am so new to the role. So I would envision that a lot of the data that I collect, and as we're working through the balanced scorecard, is going to be collecting baseline data that we'll then use in order to determine what our next steps are. So that's why you don't see a lot of consistent outcome measures when looking at some of our strategies. And then this goes hand in hand with priority 2.1.3 in expanding and enhancing our marketing program to support employee recruitment and retention efforts. And we really want to know, and this goes back to looking at the type of educator that we want to hire in our district. And it starts with your educator profile. What are we looking for? And then when we have those recruitment opportunities, everybody on our recruitment team really knows what it is we're looking for when we're going out and recruiting teachers. So we're creating that profile. We're seeking those superstars in our district to really tell our story. You're a young teacher, you have 5 years of experience. Why did you choose GCISD? You live in the DFW area and you have your pick of where you want to go, so why did you choose GCISD? Those are the stories that we want to tell because that's what's going to get their friends, their word of mouth, our reputation will expand, and so that's how we're going to set ourselves apart from other places and other areas around the Metroplex when we're recruiting the same people from the same universities. We're going to work with our communications department to help create our marketing materials that really tell the story about why employees choose GCISD. I think it's real important to look at the data of people who graduate from our district and then choose to come back and live and work. I think that's a great story to tell, especially on our marketing material and getting the word out. See, these people had a good experience. They graduated from our school district and then they could have chosen anywhere to go and they choose to come back. Let's tell that story. That's an important one to tell. And then we live in a great opportunity right by the airport. We have entertainment with Grapevine and Colleyville, lots of things to do in our area. And so promoting us as a destination district, it's a great place to work. You can work here, you can raise your family here, you can bring your kids to our school district, and then you can also stay here for entertainment. Those are great things that also promote our district as a place that you want to work. And then just salary and benefits is just one area of I guess, employee perks per se, but we would also want to promote the great things that also come with working in a district like ours, like our district mentorship program. We offer district daycare that a lot of districts around us do not offer. That's a benefit. Not only can you
in a great place and have the support you need to do your job. And you can also bring your children, even smaller children here, and put them in a place where you feel that they are safe and will care for it. So that's a great part that I would want to make sure that we advertise. And then allowing employees to come bring their children, regardless if you live in our district or in the boundaries of our district, you can still bring your kids to work and have the benefit of attending GCISD schools. So Dave is here also. He's probably going to have more of the historical aspect of what we've done and what we want to improve in and expand in with some of these strategies. So he's going to take a couple of them and we're just going to tag team.
Yeah, so it's been really exciting to sit and talk with Kelly, just, get some new ideas and different things that we can do within our district just to get our word out. When we start looking at that 2.14, this is kind of an extension of a T-class grant that we received 2 years ago, where we were able to offer assistance for some of our paraprofessionals to go back and get their teacher certification, where we, from the grant, paid for them to get their certification. We had 6. I had 1 back out. I'm working on that 6th one. We had 2 people, but 5 of them now are current teachers within GCISD. That is an English teacher, 2 SPED teachers, 2 bilingual teachers, right there. I mean, those are hard to fill positions. And part of it, when we were working through our MOU with it, is because of this, then they are guaranteed to work for us for 3 years. If you do any research, that 3 to 5 years gets them bought into the culture of a organization, and they've been highly successful. That was a partnership we did with the Region Center Go Teach 11, and I'll tell you right now, those 5 teachers all passed all of their certification tests on the first attempt. If you look at bilingual certifications, I think they have to get 5 tests that they have to take to become bilingually certified. So pretty impressive. And so Derek and I have started some early communications and proposals to look at, can we do that in-house? The grant's done, so can we do that in-house to develop our own pipeline? And then also work with Lisa in special ed is, what are some opportunities we can do for diagnosticians, LSSPs, things like that, that we can maybe grow our own with people who are interested in that. Going back to what Kelly said, probably our best recruiting tool are our people. Hey, come work in GCISD, and the number of references we get, so if we can keep some of that in-house, that's a huge positive. If you start looking at kind of that.
I want to say one more thing about Grow Your Own. That was one thing that I always looked at in other districts that I've worked in before is, who do we have on staff? And we know our paraprofessionals play a vital part in education every day. And a lot of times they may or may not have aspirations to become certified teachers, but if they do, sometimes, more often than not, they just don't know how to go about doing that. So whether it's obtaining your bachelor's degree or how do you become certified to be a teacher, I really want to create partnerships with local colleges and universities to help promote. Number one, if you need your bachelor's degree, maybe you have some credits, but maybe you're not quite there yet, we can work with places like Dallas College has a great program that will offer affordable, low-cost bachelor's degree programs for people who maybe want to become a teacher but just need to get that bachelor's degree. We can work with alternative certification programs and provide informational sessions to our paraprofessionals and substitutes to give them the information and to really outline the process of what it takes to become a teacher so that it's not so daunting and it just is a clearer pathway. Sometimes it's just finding the information is all they need and then they'll continue to do that. But it's being that liaison between the colleges, the alternative certification programs with our staff.
When we start looking at the employee retention, employee satisfaction, one of the things is to, continue our salary surveys that we do every year, just to ensure that we are within the market of what's going on here in GCI or in the Metroplex. We generally kind of in a comparison group of about 20 school districts here in the Metroplex. So continue to look at that and see where we fall within for teachers, for paraprofessionals, bus drivers, all positions here in GCISD. And that starts, I guess we have a meeting tomorrow, or Thursday. We have a meeting Thursday to start that process moving forward. One of the things that we do historically, not only this survey, but we also participate in surveys that just kind of show where we are with teachers, where we are with paras, and then also a stipend survey as well to see where we are with all of our different stipends for coaches, fine arts, UIL, and I think this is a good time to probably revisit some of those and see where we are in comparison with all of the different groups to ensure, once again, we are getting those high quality candidates. Another piece that we're looking at is to start exploring the teacher incentive allotment program that's offered by TEA. That's one where we kind of pushed a little bit down just to see where, what all kind of fell out with it. And luckily, Ms. Myers has started that in a previous district, starting to explore that. And that gives us an opportunity to explore it and see what opportunities we have for GCISD.
Dave, weren't we supposed to be in this year's cohort?
So what?
Weren't we supposed to be, or is this cohort D or F
I
that
think
we're
this
on
is-
right now?
This is F.
F, yeah, we were supposed to be in a cohort, like we had applied. So I don't know what happened to why that ball got dropped, but yeah, I'll have to pull out my documentation on it, but we were absolutely supposed to be in year F.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
We can look at that.
yeah, we can take a
I
look
don't
at
know
that.
what happened, because and
Well, it looks like it's here to stay, I think it's.
Well, I mean, certainly, we're looking into it to see what kind of traction we can get to maybe.
Well,
The TIA program from the state level, it looks like it's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there were some conversations early on whether or not.
Yeah, I think they invested in it enough.
Yeah.
It's,
Whether or
pretty
not it was
universal.
worth to look at it, because is the funding gonna run out?
That's what I was worried initially.
Yeah.
You get in it and you gotta take it away. So
Right.
you give it, you take
Exactly.
it away, but
Yeah.
the momentum right now is just keep it going.
I think from a retention standpoint, it's something worth having a committee to really explore it and look to see if that's something that will fit our district and our culture and what we want to do. There is money tied to that, and so we do have teachers in our district that do get stipends, for lack of a better word, or money from the state for teacher incentive allotment that have gotten a designation from a district that they worked in previously, and then they brought it to our district with them. The designation stays with the teacher, and it stays with the teacher for 5 years. So we get the benefit of having these designated teachers working in our district, but after 5 years, they either have to be okay with not having that designation and not receiving that stipend, or go to a district that offers TIA designations in order to get their designation again. So that's why it's important, especially for teacher retention, that we look at that to make sure that inform a committee to determine whether that's something we want to move forward with or pick up where we left off, and implementing something like that in our district. And then one other thing that I'll say about the salary study, was really pleased to see that that's something we do on a regular basis, is partner to make sure that we do have competitive salary and benefits, because we live in the DFW Metroplex area where teachers can just hop, or really employees can hop from district to district. It's important to stay competitive, not that we have to be the top paying district in the area, because all the other things that we've talked about are going to get people to stay here because of the climate, the culture, the satisfaction that they get with their job, and we would want to make sure we were competitive. And then that brings us to 2.2.2, which is ongoing coaching and professional development. And so this is really, my lens on this is really for all staff, that once staff is on board and they are working, we need the continuous improvement and development, and we do that. We need to provide ongoing support like we spoke about earlier, especially for our new people that are onboarding and the induction process, what does that look like when they're new to the district? What type of support are we giving them? But then when you're in your career and you're looking for ways to improve and grow, what kind of career advancement opportunities or providing them information? What do you want to do in order to feel support and enhance yourself as an educator in the district? So looking at these assessments for campuses and departments, offering career exploration, informational sessions. Maybe we have district employees that are interested in seeking, certification, different certifications. What does that look like to be interested in other positions? So really just making sure those opportunities are available and then providing them information to help them reach their goals and then providing that support.
Yeah, with relationships, we are continuing to do the Gallup survey, the employee engagement. It is actually set to kick off Monday. It'll run February 6th, and hopefully have the information for everybody kind of that mid-February time with our statistics. I think one of the exciting things that we implemented last year with all managers having the ability to pull theirs up separately and really drill down a little bit deeper, for example, like with Kyle, instead of looking at technology department in general, all right, let's see what our campus technicians say, and being able to drill down a little bit deeper, and that was something that we implemented last year, and we'll continue. A couple of new things on here that are kind of new ideas is conduct stay interviews. Everybody knows exit interviews, but what are we doing to sit down and talk to people of why do you stay here? What makes you stay here? And I think it would be good to just get a good cross-section of...
That's actually good. That's a good.
Get a good cross-section of new teachers, veteran teachers, coaches, custodians, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, technology, to really get a good idea of what are those things and see what trends develop through those conversations. Attends campus events, get out there. I think it is such a positive thing for our staff to see all of us on the campuses and really build that relationship. And then partner with communications department to see what are things that we can do for employee recognition. I think one of the great things that Nicole has started here is our Stars of GCISD. But how can we expand that? Maybe not a bunch of pizza and those type of things, but what are some things that we can do in-house just to build that community with our staff? And then kind of finally on that last one is one of the things that we've really been in communication with is starting to develop some staffing ratios. When we look at teachers, particularly K through 4, we look at the 22-to-1 staffing ratio. Anything above that, all the way up through high school, we look at a 25-to-1 staffing ratio. So those are pretty much set of what we do. But we've had some conversations with other people in these departments and start looking at, do we have ratios for other positions? If schools are a certain size, you have so many of X, Y, and Z. If you have a school that jumps above that number, what do we do to ensure they get an extra campus tech? So really start kind of getting a baseline for what should we look at those kind of staffing ratios outside of the classroom. And we started having some conversations with local districts here and have some examples of things that other districts do right now.
Okay. Any questions for priority 2? Recruitment and retention of our people. All right, moving into priority 3, Nicole. I know because we've dipped into priority 3 already with Holly on the corporate business partnerships. And so I think Nicole did just a couple of the performance objectives that we have to cover there, right?
Sure. So some of this is similar. I'll try to touch more on the points of where you may see some changes, or just give a little bit more where we are. Starting off with the parent and family satisfaction engagement. That is one that you guys have already received an update from me at a previous board meeting. We are further along in the process of creating the parent and family satisfaction survey. And similar to Gallup, it will just offer so much in-depth detail and where we can break down by specific areas and demographics to see where our most needed areas of improvement are, and whether that's in various portions of the district, whether that's by grade level or age of children, things like that. And the really exciting thing that I'm looking forward to is the direction that we're going. We're going to be able to offer the data on a real live dashboard that will be very transparent to our community and show where we are. And then, of course, this one would look different as we move into future years and say, here's our areas of improvement, here are our strengths and our celebrations and what we do well, and just be very in tune with our community and connect with them more through a live dashboard that will change year to year and show that progress. You heard a lot about the student engagement in district level activities, a lot about our internship program, a new thing that we are developing in the spring. We are very secondary heavy on connecting with students and helping them get involved in telling the story and hearing what their story of GCISD is. And a new thing that we're doing in the second semester is tapping into all of our elementary schools and their student newscasts and kind of developing these young storytellers as we go along, mentoring them, getting connected with all of our elementary campuses when it comes to kind of student journalism and getting to connect and highlight them. So I'm really excited to see how that transcends. We changed here. We realized that through the parent and family satisfaction survey that we'll be able to collect that data on how well our students are engaged in the district level activities and initiatives. So we are also gathering that baseline data there too to develop then our goal of we want to increase it by this much or we want to focus on these areas of improvement for future years. Additionally, 3.1.3, we are having a great year, I feel like, of presenting out in the community, getting connected with community partners, and so and growing these committees. I think you've heard a few already mentioned tonight. And so one thing specifically, though, we talked about was relaunching the what used to be called Community Champions, looking at kind of how that was going to be redeveloped. And so we have researched 10 to 12 surrounding districts, looked at what they did, kind of pulled from the best of the best. We're having planning sessions with district leadership. And the next thing on our list to do that has not been done yet is starting to establish those dates, locations, and what those session topics will look at. Additionally, last week in your board update, we provided you a kind of introduction to how we will gather interest in our committees, and that will be starting to be communicated this week. So that is how we will start to roll this one out as well, gain interest, and then continue to communicate then what the plan is for the 24-25 school year when that program gets off the ground. 3.2, there's been a little bit of change here. We are still in the process of that development of the district belief statements, especially as the scorecard has continued to evolve, getting that feedback, and we do plan to have the either updated or just tweaked belief statements that our DECs and CECs have provided input on for you by the end of the school year. 3.2.2, we are connecting with many of our civic organizations, learning of presentation opportunities, and offer speakers. As we get out in the community more and more, doing things like Leadership Day, developing relationships with those people, we want to become more proactive. I think that a lot of times as districts, we wait for a community organization to come to us and say, hey, can your superintendent come speak at this event? We are developing, by the end of this school year, going to develop that list of places and opportunities that, whether it's superintendent or members of the leadership team, have had to speak, and then use that as a baseline to go forward and make sure we're not waiting for people to come to us. We're proactively seeking out those opportunities and asking for more on top of that.
That's really good. So once that master list is kind of built and agreed, those are touch points, basically. And so did we hit 100% of our projected touch points, 75%, 85%, or did 110%? We went to all of them that we advertised and we picked up. Anyway, so priority 2 and 3, I know everybody knows this, but it bears repeating. They're more qualitative than priority 1. I mean, we can slice and dice, do numbers all day long, but we can still it's qualitative, but we can quantify qualitative by touch points and oftentimes perception surveys. I've heard y'all said several times we'll survey. Okay, so now we're surveying, we're learning from the survey, and then we just start tracking measures. But anyway, just general comment.
That's great. Another thing that we did, and you'll see it also mentioned, this was kind of a co-training that was exciting. We had a training that was about presenting, and whether it's to the general public or through media. We had a training session with our leadership team to go through kind of some do's and don'ts, just tips, and what that looks like and how we can be more equipped and feel more confident in going out and putting ourselves out there more as a leadership team in front of our community and the local media as well. And then so going into 3.2.3, we're tracking, I know we talked a little bit about this at, I think the September one where I was part of the round robin of CEC from the campus perspective and how their work was tied to the balanced scorecard. But we have had great success this year starting a few new different tactics to reach out proactively to our local media contacts. One of that is a weekly media advisory to all of our media contacts, and we continue to grow that list, again, based on stories and relationships we've built with our local media partners. And that weekly media advisory is, and we track these, resulting in, at minimum, we get at least one local media outlet reach back out to us of some of the stories that was pitched. It may be print. A lot of times we hear back from our local community impact. But case in point, tomorrow morning, CBS 11 will be at one of our campuses featuring the piano playing that happens in the lobby before school and how that ties into arts integration into the campus because it is our arts integration school experience. So these things are working, and we are making those proactive touch points with them and just giving them that nugget of information that's hooking them to be more interested in covering the positive things happening in GCISD. Our goal for this year was to double the number of those positive media coverage stories, and I can tell you we're definitely on track. We're over, and we will be over by the end of the year. So that's very exciting.
Good job.
Thank you. It's been so fun, honestly. It's been so great. And we've developed some really, really good media partners who they continue to come back for more because they know they're going to get something good out of GCISD. And last, I'll skip down to our grant scholarship opportunities and the involvement with the Education Foundation. I'm really excited about this. Their executive director, Jane, and I have sat down and we're very proactive at the beginning of the year and established that calendar of opportunities. And I think that that's been a huge key to making sure that we didn't miss an opportunity to partner and make sure we're showing how the foundation supports the district and the district supports the foundation. And just a couple of examples of that were this year we had a representative from the foundation be at every single varsity football game where we assist with the junior captain program. It is sponsored by the foundation, and through our partnership, we had a member of the foundation at every single game walk out with the junior captain and be featured on the board. And it was just being more intentional about showing that this is sponsored by the foundation, because you have a lot of those times where you hear from people, oh, I didn't know that you guys were the ones who did that. And so we want to be really intentional about making sure that from both ends that we are putting people where they need to be. So junior captain went great. And just in general, communication to staff so that we're aware of what's coming when it was grant opportunities, and the number of teachers who submitted grants, or whether it was an employee giving campaign. And now as we look forward to the golf tournament, we are coordinating together on how to make sure that this is in all of our communications, not just something communicated by the foundation or not something that's communicated by the district, but that we're working hand in hand because the work that they do supports the work that GCISD does. So by the end of this school year, we want to show that we've increased the involvement in all their campaigns and events of that nature, and then build from there and set some new goals for the future. So I know I went through that relatively quickly.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions for Nicole? And so, I always want to give you credit. It feels like you've been here 5 years. How long have you been here?
18, 19 months.
Okay. I want to remind the board, when she came on board, she was one of one. Right? She was the only member on the communications team. And so the work that she and her team have accomplished has been monumental. And so excited about the work that they do because it touches all of this.
I feel like I tell you that all the time.
Yeah. And so it's exciting because, you know, they're coming to us like every other day, almost, hey, we have this idea, we have this, you know, here, what about this? And just throwing out. It's never boring, certainly, but it's always like, we're always considering like the next, the new, you know, and so it's exciting because what it's doing is it's showcasing the greatness of our people, of our staff, of our students, of our families, of our community, and so it's all tied together. And so kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you. If y'all hear me say nothing else, just that our biggest thing is that we want less and less and less people to say, why didn't you know that about GCISD? We don't want to be the best kept secret. We don't, you know, we don't want the stories to go untold, whether it be from our academic success to HR, to our financial stewardship, to our amazing technology support and operations. I mean, all the work these guys do, we get the joy of telling those stories, and that's why we're always coming up with new ideas, because anytime somebody comes to us and says they didn't know that, that's a dagger to the heart, and we're going to strive to continue to make sure that that doesn't happen.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to priority 4, Eric Paula.
I'll go first. A lot of the priorities that surround finance have to do with transparency, clarity, stewardship of district funds, whatnot. The good thing, I guess, about school finance in general is when you know, Greg mentioned, you know, going out and finding those top school districts and, you know, really comparing yourself to those districts, striving to be those districts or compete with those districts. And the good thing about in school finance, not only locally but across the state and across the nation, is there are already recognitions and there's already things that are established that the top tier school districts are going after. They're establishing themselves based on certain parameters that are already out there. And so one of the things with...
I just started starring those. I hadn't seen those on here yet.
What's that?
Well, just the ASBO pathway. Yeah, that's awesome.
A lot of the outcomes go back to, like Greg was mentioning, is those things. Like you mentioned, the ASBO pathways budget award, and then, you know, the Materials budget award, and the comptroller's transparency stars that Greg mentioned earlier. All those things are things when you think of transparency and you think of being clear, that's the top. That's where you want to go. And so a lot of what is focusing on the finance is going after those things, because if you can reach that pinnacle, then you have kind of put yourself up there with the top tier districts.
And they're not typically, they're best practice recognition. It's not like you're doing, you might do a little extra work, especially with transparency, but I don't know. Every time we looked at all of them, it's like, that makes sense. I mean, you can get it done, and then you can do it this way, you know. It might be a little extra work. We never found them to be so cumbersome, it wasn't worth the effort to get the designation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're already that close, get the designation.
and we compare with it.
Correct. Yeah, and 4.1.2 mentions, best practices, developing processes and procedures that adhere to, professional standards that incorporate those best practices, that, go into everything we do on the finance side. So the progress measures, or excuse me, not progress measures, column 3, basically the key actions, key actions kind of follow a couple things. One, the budget process and transparency and clarity in the budget process. 2 is 4.1.2 is just in regard to the same things, transparency, clarity, stewardship, just in the district finances and business operations as a whole. 4.1.3 talks about building our people, educating our people, because we want to see our people, whether it be our budget managers or whether it be our campus bookkeepers or people in the finance office, we want to see them to grow, and they only help us out. They help us in our job when they are more educated and stronger in their positions. And then 4.2.1 looks at more on the review process of the department budget, but also looks at compliance. Because a big piece on the finance side is compliance, period. I mean, there's so many things that we have to comply to in regard to the state laws, that we have to develop processes in order to make sure that we do develop, or we do are in compliance with those things. And so that's really the breadth of finance and the direction that we're going. A lot of the column 4 items are just a step in between those awards where we need to get, and those recognitions that we need to get to, in order to say, hey, we're as transparent as we can be, we're as clear in our, because they establish, when you talk about reports to the board and reports to the community, very strict, here's how it's got to be presented, and so those are the targets where we're going in the financial services.
Any questions for Derek? Finance side. No. All right. Paul?
Okay, so, we're gonna jump over to 4.2, and then I'll go back to another one that we have. And 4.2.2 specifically, because 4.2.1 is still mostly Derek's information there that he's placed in there. But so when we get to 4.2.2, let me clarify that in the second to the last column, the first 2 items, Derek and I are going to have to calibrate here because we're riding on top of each other at this point. We've kind of got the same ideas going. I'm going to cover what's basically in 3 through 7, if you will, in that second to last column for 4.2.2. Because when I read what the board has adopted here, it is talking about a system so that we can calibrate continuously what we're doing and how we're doing, and ultimately figure out how we measure what's happening in each of those areas. So in 3, you'll see we need to first determine the process by which we're going to evaluate each of the areas that are going to be evaluated. There isn't one set way to do it for each area, so we have to determine that. And by that, I can mean a department. I'm not speaking for any department outside of myself, but it could apply to Kyle's world, or even the operations of the finance folks or the tax office. But that's what we're talking about. First is establishing the process by which we're going to do it. Second is to identify the key responsibilities of each department, making sure that we are going after the things that are most important as we're trying to evaluate overall effectiveness and efficiency in any operation, right? And then 5 is establish the process for determining internal customer satisfaction, which was specifically called out in the adoption of 4.2.2. Part of that too is determining how you're going to do that. It's easy to say you're going to survey, but it's also determining what's going to be the best way to survey. Is that face-to-face? Is that an online document? Is it a combination of things that you would do in order to attain the kind of information? But you have to also know what it is you're asking and why you're asking it, and what is, when you get the response or information, how's it going to help you improve whatever it is that you're looking to improve. So there's still a lot of that to basically be established or developed. And then from there, you move to determining the measurement targets that we would want to see for each department, and then a plan for implementing the things that you've learned through that review process, whatever you have established there, right? So we have that by August of 24, now moving into the 5th column, that in most of our departments or roles, we will have determined what those key responsibilities are and the process by which we would measure internal customer satisfaction. Let's hear, we do this on a certain basis, but let's hear systematically now how people are receiving, how they feel about, what they think about the operations internally. And then from there, by January of 25, we would determine what our measurement targets would be for each of those departments relative to that, and maybe some of the other things that we're going to glean or learn through that process. So, you know, we've got to focus here on what we're measuring and what we value and why we're even taking the time to measure that. So there's a need to calibrate within the system what it is that we're really trying to go after in each of those areas. So that's what 4.2.2 is about.
Is the concept of an internal customer is meaning there's a staff member at the central office, basically, for lack of a better term, that's serving a staff member with their services, and so that's an internal customer to those processes, and then parents, students, community, that's external customers. That's one. To think about that, does that make sense? Like you have external customers, or then you have internal customers. The users of the work
right.
that a lot of them do are internal customers. They're staff members, but they're the user of the service. That's the definition of a customer.
Yeah. From there, I'm going to jump over to 4.3, long-range facility management plan. The reality is this was adopted after we were on our established process. A lot of we were already, so we started our long-range management plan process before the board adopted this, right? So we were in the middle of one. So what you see here is a lot of, here are the targets we hit along the way with that process and plan. And obviously, the culmination is the end of this month with the final presentation coming before the board in terms of the bond proposal. Facility management planning, capital planning process. Then there was a bond advisory process. We as a district still have to go back to the facility I mean, that's an ongoing thing. That should just not really ever just stop and sit dormant. So what I want you to know is, I don't know that I want to, I mean, it's written here for you, but I don't want to review all the things that we've been talking about for over a year and every month with the updates. What I can tell you is I've already written a new new columns for 4.3.1 that will then begin to take us to the next process. So this is probably one that will change more significantly than the others. Similar work, but we have some different things to go after and talk about as a district as we continue to look at our district holistically and what our needs are going to be in the future relative to this and the needs of our campuses and our departments and so forth, right? Like fine arts and athletics, CTE in particular, once they've kind of established what it is that they are trying to accomplish through that program. 4.3.2 is kind of, you're always evaluating your financial capacity for how you're going to handle your facilities and your capital management. So that too is going to be an ongoing process, but a lot of what's reported here is what we've already done as we went through this process to develop the bond program that we're talking about calling the election for in May of 24. This too will be one that we have to come back to and revisit and figure out when is the appropriate time to revisit, although we know annually kind of where we are in our debt capacity kind of range. That's not something that we have to really set a whole lot about each year, but we need to keep an eye on and be considering and talking about as there are fluctuations in the market. So it's kind of more of a Derek and the financial advisor piece. I always keep my nose in it just because it has an impact on everything that we do. Any questions about these areas? And I know you'll want to see more what the rewrite looks like or where we're going with the next phase, right? Yes.
In the long range facility management, I know we've spoken about it before, but I just want to get, and it's probably going to be in the rewrite, but are we also looking at, like we talked about, a lot of our things are past their expectant, life expectancy, and then we've been 5 or 6 years past in some of these situations, circumstances where are we making sure that we're evaluating that moving forward so that we have these timelines better spaced out so that we're not in certain crunches, if this bond's got to get passed, these key items for this, that, and the other, where we're kind of working ahead and doing preventative maintenance and planning out, those life expectancy things so that we're not kind of caught, 3 or 4 years past their due, and now we're in the need to try to rush money through for projects and move money around for different projects. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Okay.
does. I think to an extent, for some things, you're going to always be a little bit behind. But to the extent that you can narrow that gap, yes. So
Yep.
remember that the original assessments that were done were really looking out 10 years. And so we have that information. We know, for example, when a roof is predicted to possibly need to have either a major overhaul or be completely replaced because of its current condition, its life expectancy, when it was put on, just, all the things that you see about that. So we still have that information, so now we have to move into everything that wasn't included in this bond and start working through those things, as well as add to it whatever else comes up, between now and when you're moving through because that's an annual kind of event.
Sure.
So there are those things that we know and that are predicted. As far as narrowing the gap in terms of being behind, part of that is an outgrowth of when this district just flat grew, which unfortunately was mostly in the late 90s and early 2000s. The HVAC world is going to take us a while to catch up in because so many units came online in a very narrow window of time. The practice in our operational departments, I'll just take transportation as one relative to vehicles, was that you didn't buy everything all in 1 year. You spaced it out so that they would come due spaced out as well. Unfortunately, the district had to build schools when it had to build schools. And so you have 26 units on a building that basically were all installed when the school was built, and guess what? They all start to come due at the same time. And so that is where we are as a district with some of those major kinds of things and the age of facilities. The goal would be to narrow that gap and space things out, yes, and that would have to be a part of this next process however we decide to attack the facility management and capital management plan itself, and everything that we're looking at to go along with that. There are a lot of things about the district that inform what you're going to do with your facilities. And we need to kind of get through those things as a district to know that part of the impact or outcome on what you're going to do with those facilities. Okay? It's a very good one. All right. The other one that I need to touch on is actually back in 1, which is 1.3.1, I believe. So 1.3.1 says 2 things. One, that we're going to have a system basically to mitigate our vulnerabilities. And then secondly, that we're going to increase our preparedness for emergencies within the system itself. One of our departments, which you're familiar with, really creates the system in which these things happen. And a lot of the information that is here is about the systematic things that need to take place in order to achieve as best you can that preparedness, and as often as you can determine, not only through experience but from practice, what to mitigate. And so you see there a lot of information in each of those columns, it tells you the things that we've said have to happen on an annual basis. Now, one of the new things, more so, is the training of school resource officers, which was a blessing to get this year, right? And we have them in all our campuses. Initial baseline was to train them for GCISD, train them, assist in their training to be school resource officers. Our next role after that, and how you'll see this change and get written, is to then talk to them and, kind of get their perspectives, kind of survey them. From that also, have them help identify things that they have seen or noticed. There are conversations that are taking place, but we need to do that so that one of our outcome measures over in the 5th column changes. Right now, it was just about getting them trained and assimilated into the system, basically, and then we are talking about, okay, so now what comes next relative to them, and that's true for any of these things. We do measure that our inspections are taking place. And so I don't want you to think that, number 6 says complete them, and over here it says, by August of 24, you're going to establish a mechanism for tracking the inspections. We do track them. What we don't have is a one-place shop. And it's really hard. And it's being done by different areas. So there are systems that he may check. There are systems that people within emergency management are checking. There's certainly things that facilities are checking. We don't have one place to bring all that data together to do any kind of reporting out in kind of a consistent and coherent way. And so that's really what this is talking about, is figuring out how we can do that without overwhelming the system. Because the most important thing is that we're doing the inspections. The next important thing is reporting on it to make sure that we're staying true to conducting those inspections, right? So it's kind of circular there. A lot of this is, like I said, relative to the work of our campuses through the emergency managers on campus. We're setting the framework. We're trying to help them know exactly what to do, how often to do it. We know the number of drills. We know if drills are being done on a monthly basis as it is now. We've never reported out in a grandiose way about that, but we have to the board, we have to the Safety and Security Committee, and this is always kind of one of those sensitive areas where there's certain information we're not going to talk about outwardly and other information that we are going to talk about outwardly. And so this is going to continue to develop as well as far as what the outcome measures will be in some of these items. But questions that you might have in this particular area?
I love that a couple of times we have it, but it's not formatted in a way that we track it over time and make it transparent. Right, and so that's the game. I mean, is the grid going down? The lights just went. Okay, it's just motion.
No, that's energy conservation right there.
Yeah, that's in the 1.3 point.
Yeah. That was 2 bonds ago.
Yeah.
Well, something that I would like to say, just to echo kind of what Greg said, but to me, this is the hardest part, is getting all of these boxes filled in. But once we start getting, now you can see the progress. And I'm going to encourage y'all in your department that you do celebrate your little wins, because we have big things ahead. And when we start succeeding in these areas, it's going to be felt. You're going to know it. I already see differences. It already feels, you can just see these things. So I say this, this is so exciting to me, but it's fun to see things checked off and go achieve and do. And I just think, Dr. Schnaut, this is great. It's great. You have big, big things ahead. And our limits are just basically ourselves. And so that's exciting. And I hope that, that we're all excited about the fact that we're going to reach new heights. So I don't know, this is awesome. So thank you for all the work and the presentations and all of that. Does anybody want to say anything else?
I just want to thank y'all and thank Shannon and Brad for kicking off this process. This has fulfilled a deep-seated need in me that I didn't even know that I had. I love spreadsheets, and this is so awesome that I appreciate all the work that y'all put into this, and that we can all see a direction that we're going and what the plans are. And it's things like I lose sleep over. One of the things that's one of my, passion things is teacher retention. And I was visiting Great Run Middle School, and Mandy Alexander was telling me how she was doing stay interviews. I thought that is so awesome. And I wake up, I wonder if all our other principals are doing stay interviews. That is such a good idea. Look at that, we need to be doing stay interviews. And so, I can look on here and see some of the things that we're doing. I'm sure that everything we do is not reflected in here. Obviously.
It better
But,
not.
the two things that cross my mind, another thing that I'm real passionate about is our ELL, our ED, emerging early little learners, and, we have such a greater percentage of those kiddos that are not at grade level, that are not at grade level. So I'm going to assume, just tell me if I'm safe to assume that in this,
They're represented in the overall goals and
that's what I'm
priority one.
asking, in this,
What we're ultimately gonna have, much like you received, I believe, last week of your board update, where we have that chart with our goals. We will eventually have a chart like that, we're working on it, which will have some very specific goals around targeted areas that we know we're very closely monitoring, like our bilingual learners, our special education growth. Those are a couple of
It's a
targeted areas.
segment of, that you
Yes.
work on to get to this.
So it's a
eventually.
progress measure to reach that overall goal. So it'll kind of be a little addendum that has our targets on there that we're looking for.
we have such cocktail, that's great. And then, another thing we've talked some about, behavior, particularly the secondary, behavior in general, managing behavior, classroom management, our consequences behavior. I know y'all are working on the, what is the dress code? Code of conduct.
Yeah.
Our student code of conduct. Is that something that fits in here anywhere, or is that just something that you do to support?
That actually falls under 1.3 safety and well-being. So where we have that reflected right now is 1.3.2. That multi-tiered system of support is both to include social and behavioral support. And so when we talk about those progress measures there, we're really looking at our data from, that's where we look and monitor our discipline data. So those progress measures, so when we also say that 20% of our tiered students will show progress or exit the program in behavior, as the example that you gave, if we started the year with 10 tier 3 students identified for behavior, then we're saying that we've set that goal of that 20% growing or exiting. So our progress measures around that are going to be in 1.3.2 in that multi-tiered systems of support.
Is there, and this is a real question, you have several good measures here under 132. Is discipline data appropriate to be one of the progress monitors? I mean, don't you glance at discipline data as you're thinking about MTSS? Not the only measure, I'm just saying a measure that you would look at that may
I think it'll clarify by listing it, calling it out as discipline data on those progress measures. Our EdGen's dashboard allows us to look at kind of all measures of our data. And so I think that's just an area where we know what's in there.
Wait, what was the last thing you said?
Where we have EdGen's data.
Oh, okay.
That's our
data.
That's our
data.
dashboard
Okay.
that we have access to really all of our data.
Gotcha.
But we need to call it out because you don't necessarily, if it blows away and somebody reads it, we don't see that that's being monitored.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree, I think
Well,
that's
that's
good.
great.
And I'm not only just, one of the things I've talked about is not just our tier 3 and the numbers we have there, but it's just the general climate. I was, like I know at Collegeville Heritage, one of the big things that we're working on is students having out their ID. I was up there visiting and they were calling students that had out their ID for it. Heritage Middle School, I know they've made some real efforts to manage phones and
And
those are gonna be things that are more represented in our district improvement plan and very specifically in our campus improvement plan.
I do think, though, I know that we've heard resoundingly that it's important to our teachers on the discipline side for us to try to curtail some of the issues, to support them. So I think it might be kind of a good faith effort for us to have it like listed, like you were talking about, Sheila, if we could have it like as a separate, underneath, well, as part of that
Progress
list there.
measure.
Yeah, progress measure in that list there on 1.3.2. Because we do, we look at that weekly, just to see what trends are, and then to whether it's on the quantitative side, but also the qualitative piece. I know that, Dr. McMullen is supporting our campuses daily, and part of our job is working through some discipline issues when they arise, and so we might as well kind of get credit, not that we want credit for it.
Well, sometimes you could use the score. When things become standard operating procedures, sometimes people drop them off the scorecard, but then sometimes they'll keep them on the scorecard because they want to make sure that the public can see. They would hate for something great to be happening, we're going to drop it off the scorecard so it's not part of the public communication.
Well, people do not realize you're working.
Or not realize that you're working on it.
You're working at that, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So there's some rationale for leaving things on here in the future that may be SOP. That's a good thing. It should become standard operating procedure. We should leave them on there to make sure that there's communication around it on a consistent basis.
That's definitely one we'll take back and talk about, so we want to make sure that we are accurately reporting as well. And that we're consistently coding and addressing things, issues consistently. It's not just about decreasing. Of course, we want to decrease accidents, but we also want to make sure we're annually consistently across the district and that we're tracking that with fidelity.
Great. Anything else?
I want to say that as I watch you all tonight, it becomes even more clear that you all have really, really hard jobs. And I appreciate you collaborating with each other. I see it and it's working. And most importantly, I appreciate the relationship that I have with each of you because it's going to propel us forward and it's very exciting. So thank you, sincerely.
Anything else? Okay, so at this time, we will move to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, which is to deliberate the appointment of employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. The time is 7:59, and we will be going to the Bronco room, which is
Hey, thank you, team. Good job.
Okay, so we will call this meeting back to order at 8:55. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Motion passes.
Raise your hand,
4-0.
Sammy.
Wow.
Wait,
Seven. 7-0.
Did you go?